Cool Figure TV. Revolutionary salute. Revolutionary salute. Like, share, subscribe. Welcome to the House of Revolution. You know I'm your humble host, the Yah-Mean of Revolution, and it's over. It's all over, y'all. There's no reason to worry about the election no more. Kamala made sure that she was finished. Before we get into that, be sure to wipe your feet. That means hit the like button, like, share, subscribe. Let everybody know Core Figures Live. Support the House of Revolution. We knew this would happen. She's the gift that keeps on giving.
Perhaps a weakness, some would say, but I actually think it's a strength.
Well, my weaknesses are actually strengths. Oh, yes. Very good. There you go. Very good.
I really do value having a team of very smart people around me.
I work too hard. I care too much. And sometimes I can be too invested in my job.
Let me be very clear. I'm not going to vote for a wall under any circumstances. I am not for a wall. They're not jumping over walls. So the idea that we're going to sell this thing to the American public and require the taxpayers of our country to pay $5 billion for something that will not deliver what he is suggesting we need is ridiculous, and I will not support it.
It does call for $650 million that was earmarked under Trump to actually still go to build the wall.
I'm not afraid of good ideas where they occur.
So you don't think it's stupid anymore?
I think what he did and how he did it did not make much sense because he actually didn't do much of anything.
What a joke.
I just talked about that wall, right? We just talked about it. He didn't actually do much of anything.
But you do want to build some wall.
I want to strengthen our border.
I think that the word salad stuff gets on my nerves. I think that some of the evasions are not necessary.
When she doesn't want to answer a question, her habit is to kind of go to word salad city.
I'll just tell you what I'm hearing from people who I have been talking to, and that is that if her goal was to close the deal, they're not sure she did that.
Thank you, Eric. And you're absolutely right. You know it. I know it. I think most Americans know it. Price of groceries is still too high.
I'm Donald J. Trump, and I approve this message.
Kamala Harris did a town hall with CNN last night. And honestly, it was an endorsement commercial for Donald Trump at this point.
Republicans would take another hour of Kamala Harris. We'd just press play, let her keep going. We'd pay for another hour to let her keep not answering the questions. I think Anderson's asking her, well, why haven't you done it? You've been there for 4 years. Why have you done any of this? And the word salad answer she gave to that was just mind-boggling. I mean, it's blown up the internet, her answer to that question. I think the things that are troubling for people were her responses to, Van said about what you're going to do to reduce costs when they asked her at the beginning. We're hurting economically. She said, I'm going to prosecute corporations, right? That's not going to lower costs. How are you going to make things better for me? I'm going to prosecute people. Trump bad is not a message that's going to get her elected. Trump bad message. I disagree with.
It was a unmitigated, it was a complete and total collapse. Train wreck would be nice to describe it. I mean, even CNN had to admit that it was a bunch of word salad. You are going to want to watch this entire thing because you're going to want to laugh and just have a boost. If you want to see something that is just pure Comedy Central, SNL couldn't even do a skit this good. That is how bad she is. There was not a single direct answer that she could give. She was just all over the place. She looked nervous and small and just, I mean, almost a caricature of someone trying to become president. I'm going to take you through a few of these. Let's start out. I wanted to start out with this one that was probably the worst of the night, but I'm going to skip that one because I want to save it for later as the crescendo to lead up to this dumpster fire. Guys, make sure you're following me on my other channel, Melanie Off Script. I actually have been reporting over there that there's some shenanigans with the polls. It even was reported on a local television station in Tennessee, but we're seeing ballots are switching over from one candidate to the other. So you're going to want to go over there and follow follow me because I'm going to keep you up to date with kind of like, you know, inside baseball details that you may not see. They're kind of like all over Twitter, but we know mainstream and a lot of people will not talk about it. But with that, let's get into this mess.
Considering you have been in the position of vice president for the past 4 years under the Biden administration, how can we expect you to deviate from the direction of that administration compared to your own? How can we differentiate your policy and your beliefs from that of Biden's?
That's a great question, and thank you. Well, first of all, my administration will not be a continuation of the Biden administration. I bring to this role my own ideas and my own experience. I represent a new generation of leadership on a number of issues and believe that we have to actually take new approaches. For example, what we talked about in terms of housing. My experience that leads to that priority includes what I did to take on the big banks around the foreclosure crisis when I brought billions of dollars to homeowners that were the subject of predatory lending. I know what home ownership means to the American people, not to mention what it meant to my mother, who worked very hard and saved up so that by the time I was a teenager, she was able to buy our first home. I bring to it my experience actually taking care of my mother when she was sick, and it was, as it turned out, dying from cancer. And so I know what it means and have the experience of taking care of an elderly relative, and I have raised children. And so I bring to my priorities and will, as president, a new approach and a new idea, frankly, about.
Now, another thing I noticed about this cosplay chameleon pretending to be black, her and Barack Obama, they always praised their mothers, you know, and their grandparents who, you know, taught them everything. She always praising her mother, the Indian lady. Barack Obama was always praising his mother because, you know, his mother raised him, the white lady. This shit is disgusting. No, these two black, no praise for the black woman because they wasn't raised by none. But the bigger picture is no praise for the man. You see, none of them get the praise. No, Barack didn't praise no black man. They made sure they put him in there so the black man wouldn't get no praise whenever Barack was talking about a strong family. No, his father wasn't there. Bingo. Kamala too, her mother. She always never praise her father for nothing he did. This is disgusting, man. I don't give a damn about him, but I'm just saying this is done on purpose. All the praise go to the Indian lady with all the values.
About what we need to do to deal with the sandwich generation.
Ooh,
What? I like, what would make you different from Biden? And it's a bunch of me. Well, you know, I am this and I did that. And earlier, she wanted to bring in, she came from a middle-class family, but I saw her correct herself. Like she held it back and tried to keep going, but then she had to get it in. My mom had to buy a house when I was a teenager, and then now she was sick. Now this whole narrative, her mother was sick, she had to take care of her because now she wants to do home health care included into Medicare. This is something she's come up with recently, last minute, because her campaign is completely bombing. But it's a non-answer. There's no policy that she's stating that is making her different, the hard-hitting facts. It is insanity that after all this time, she does not have distinct talking points that are ready to go on how she's different than Biden. Absolutely none. It's like she's nervous, she's caught off guard, and you'll notice with every answer, she looks like a deer caught in the headlights. Like she's surprised someone's asking it, and it's like, okay, well, let me be clear. Like she always starts with something just to get it out. And it just doesn't land anywhere. Now, home ownership and all these other things. And then it goes back into, why haven't you done it already? Let's continue.
Do you see something in that?
I mean, is that profound because it rhymes? I mean, look, she doesn't have to.
I do think it was very well said.
She doesn't have to be flawless, but she has to give you something. I mean, she's like a true double threat. You know, she's terrible on her feet when she gets unexpected questions. And simultaneously, she can't even answer the expected questions. It's nothing. You'd think she'd be prepared to do this by now. You know, what's a mistake you've made? Nothing. What's a weakness you have? Nothing. What's the first law you want to pass? Nothing. What's a policy difference between you and Joe Biden? Nothing. Over and over and over. Empty, empty, empty. If she were an animal, she'd be a duck-billed platitude.
But look,
It's a total word salad.
I mean, you did raise your hand saying in a debate when asked if border crossing should be decriminalized, but obviously that is not your position.
I never intended, nor will I ever allow America to have a border that is not secure. I believe we need to deal with illegal immigration. There needs to be consequences, which is why part of my plan that I have outlined, and again, please go to KamalaHarris.com. Sorry to throw a website on you, but why not?
No.
And you will see that part of my plan includes what we need to do to actually do more as it relates to putting resources in, including increasing penalties.
I mean, you did raise your hand saying in a debate when asked if border crossing should be
What? We need to do more. Hold on.
decriminalized, but obviously that is not your position.
I never intended, nor will I ever allow America to have a border that is not secure. I believe we need to deal with it.
You're never going to allow America to have a border that's not secure. Are we living in an alternate reality? Like, if you look at like the show Stranger Things, then there's like the upside down. I feel like Kamala Harris is living in the upside down. You are never going to let the border not be secure? They talk about how she's an alcoholic. I don't even think she was drinking. She has to be on bath salts to actually give that answer with a straight face. Because the question is, she raised her hand like she wanted to decriminalize illegal immigrants crossing the border. But now, as we know, she flip-flops. She's a chameleon. Whatever the wind blows that she thinks she needs to say and do in order to get elected, that's what she's going to do. Insanity.
Illegal immigration. There needs to be consequences, which is why part of my plan that I have outlined, and again, please go to KamalaHarris.com. Sorry to throw a website on you, but why not?
Why not? Sorry to throw a website on you, but why not? I've detailed in my plan, but she has no idea what the plan is because someone else wrote it and she doesn't know what it is. She without a script, without a teleprompter, she can give you no details. It's just a bunch of top line word salad and hope you don't keep asking any more questions. But I've got a website.
And you will see that part of my plan includes what we need to do to actually do more as it relates to putting resources in, including increasing penalties.
I mean, you did.
Part of my plan outlines what we need to do because we need to do more. That's her plan. But again, she never answers the question about decriminalizing border crossings.
Some voters, though, might ask, you've been in the White House for 4 years. You were vice president, not the president. But some voters, though, might ask, you've been in the White House for 4 years. You were vice president, not the president. But why wasn't any of that done for the last 4 years?
Well, there was a lot that was done, but there's more to do, Anderson. And I'm pointing out things that need to be done that haven't been done, but need to be done.
Some voters, though, might ask, you've been in the White House for 4 years. You were vice.
Did y'all catch that? Let me just say, I'm pointing out things that need to be done. I'm pointing out things that need to be done that haven't been done that need to be done. What?
President, not the president, but why wasn't any of that done for the last 4 years?
Well, there was a lot that was done, but there's more to do, Anderson. And I'm pointing out things that need to be done that haven't been done, but need to be done.
Some voters, though, might ask.
Ooh, oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. What is she talking about? There was another non-answer.
Is a border wall stupid?
Well, let's talk about Donald Trump and that border wall. So remember, Donald Trump said Mexico would pay for it? Come on, they didn't. How much of that wall did he build? I think the last number I saw is about 2%. And then when it came time for him to do a photo op, you know where he did it? In the part of the wall that President Obama built.
But you're agreeing to a bill that would earmark $650 million to continue building that wall.
I pledge that I am going to bring forward that bipartisan bill to further strengthen and secure our border. Yes, I am. And I'm going to work across the aisle to pass a comprehensive bill that deals with a broken immigration system. I think Jackson's question, part of it was to acknowledge that America has always had migration, but there needs to be a legal process for it. People have to earn it. And that's the point that I think is the most important point that can be made, which is we need a president who is grounded in common sense and practical outcomes. Like, let's just fix this thing. Let's just fix it. Why is there any ideological perspective on it? Let's just fix the problem.
To fix the problem, you're doing this compromise bill. It does call for $650 million that was earmarked under Trump to actually still go to build the wall.
I am not afraid of good ideas where they occur.
So you don't think it's stupid anymore?
I think what he did and how he did it did not make much sense, because he actually didn't do much of anything.
He's going to do it the right way.
I just talked about that wall, right? We just talked about it. He didn't actually do much of anything.
But you do want to build some wall.
I want to strengthen our border.
She has no idea what she's doing. She has no idea what she's talking about. And then this cackle and laugh, and it's just almost like awkward because no one else is laughing. No one else thinks it's funny. There's nothing funny about the border, but I guess she thinks it's funny. It's hilarious. And then she contradicts herself over and over. And it is like beautiful to see CNN, Anderson Cooper finally fact checking her in real time, which we know they haven't been doing. It's just a bunch of softball, but she just gives a bunch of non-answer, and everyone knows it needs to be done. I mean, it's something, it needs to be done. And Trump had, hey, let's talk about Trump's. How did this woman make it this far in life? I know some of y'all are going to say Willie Brown, but I'm trying to keep this, they go low. I'm trying to go high, but any minute now, I'm going to have to go low because this chick is deranged.
Is there something you can point to in your life, political life, or in your life in the last 4 years that you think is a mistake that you have learned from?
I mean, I've made many mistakes. And they range from, if you've ever parented a child, you make lots of mistakes too. In my role as vice president, I mean, I've probably worked very hard at making sure that I am well versed on issues, and I think that is very important. It's a mistake not to be well versed on an issue and feel compelled to answer a question.
Is there something you can point to?
Like that question now? Let me just get to her little answer finally.
I think that is very important. It's a mistake not to be well versed on an issue and feel compelled to answer a question.
Is there
like someone running for president that has no idea what they're doing, that has been spoon-fed answers, has her earpiece in, and the mainstream media just ignores all of her problems? They hated her 4 years ago, but now she's, Queen Mother Earth is a godsend from heaven. Now let's get to the worst answer of the night. The whole thing was a train wreck. I encourage you to watch it on CNN. Like, they have it cut up into clips. It is a pure comedy show. But now this one in particular, I thought was just particularly humiliating.
So I may not be quick to have the answer as soon as you ask it about a specific policy issue sometimes, because I'm going to want to research it. I'm going to want to study it. I'm kind of a nerd sometimes, I confess. So I may not be quick to have the answer as soon as you ask it about a specific policy issue sometimes, because I'm going to want to research it. I'm going to want to study it. I'm kind of a nerd sometimes, I confess. So I may not be quick.
Because she couldn't answer the questions. So this was kind of her... I'm going to want to read. I'm going to want to study it because I. Now let's get to the CNN reaction right after this entire disaster.
Oh, we're gonna be going over Lil Durk going fed tomorrow, y'all. Yeah, FBI picked up 5 of his crew for a murder in LA. I didn't want to go over that tonight because we got a lot of geopolitical stuff going on, but we will be touching on Lil Durk trying to play like he's a Muslim brother and he want peace. That was all phony, like I said in one of my videos. We'll get to that.
I'll just tell you what I'm hearing from people who I have been talking to, and that is that if her goal was to close the deal, they're not sure she did that. And, you know, some people have asked, is she being held to a different standard? Maybe, but that's maybe the world that she's living in. And on the question of who she is, people are understanding that a little bit more, but what she will do, the question about her legislative priorities, name one, there wasn't one. You know, some more of her personality and her sort of character questions about your weaknesses or what mistakes did you make? Not necessarily the answers there. I'll just tell you what I'm hearing from people who I have been talking to.
When she doesn't want to answer a question, her habit is to kind of go to word salad city. And she did that on a couple of answers. One was on Israel. Anderson asked a direct question, would you be stronger on Israel than Trump? And there was a 7-minute answer, but none of it related to the question he was asking. When she doesn't want to answer a question, her habit is to kind of go to word salad city. And she did that.
Not just word salad city. Oh, that hurt. They're actually using word salad. David Axelrod, okay, is saying this about her. You know, you read the tea leaves. These rats are all jumping ship.
She passed that test. I think that the word salad stuff gets on my nerves. I think that some of the evasions are not necessary. But when she's talking about trying to get you a house, I believe her. Mm-hmm. She passed that test. I think that the word salad stuff gets on my nerves. I think that some of the evasions are not necessary. But when she's talking about trying to get you a house, I believe her. Mm-hmm.
Word salad gets on Van Jones's nerves now. What happened to Mamala? She wrote you a love letter. I wonder if he's going to be crying about losing this election like he's done many times before when Joe Biden drops out and everything else. Like Van Jones is the most emotional beta male on television today. Now, this is going to be fun. CNN actually did a fact check on her after this town hall car crash, train wreck disaster. And everyone's shocked about it because they have been so partisan. They have, you know, but it looks like they're trying to, you know, skirt in the middle a little bit now because they're reading the tea leaves and every single one of them knows she has lost the election. Just like every single one of them knew Joe Biden was the Walking Dead.
So first, let's listen to a claim the vice president made about her policy shift on fracking.
I've been very clear we could have dispensed with this in 2020. I am not going to ban fracking. I did not as vice president. In fact, as vice president, I cast the tie-breaking vote that now has opened up more fracking leases.
And you point out, too, when you're running for vice president in 2020, you were not talking about banning fracking, but...
No, Anderson, I pledged that I would not ban fracking.
Right, I know.
It is not true that Harris pledged in 2020 that she would not ban fracking as president. Her campaign has explained that she was referring to her comments in a VP debate with Mike Pence. But here's the thing about that debate. Nowhere in it did Harris say she had changed her own previous 2019 support for a fracking ban. What she did say in that debate twice was that Joe Biden, the head of the Democratic ticket at the time, would not ban fracking himself. I have the quotes here. She said, Joe Biden will not ban fracking, end quote. And then she said, quote, Joe Biden will not end fracking. He has been very clear about that, end quote. She didn't say Kamala Harris wouldn't ban fracking as president. That made sense at the time. He was the candidate. But contrary to her claim tonight to Anderson, she did not pledge until this year that she personally would not support a fracking ban. Now let's listen to something she said tonight about former President Trump's border wall.
Remember, Donald Trump said Mexico would pay for it? Come on, they didn't. How much of that wall did he build? I think the last number I saw is about 2%.
It is true Mexico didn't pay for the wall. That 2% figure, though, is at least somewhat too low. Trump repeatedly said on the campaign trail in 2015, 2016, that we need 1,000 miles of wall. And during his presidency, 52 miles of new wall were built where no wall existed before. So even that is more than 5% of his pledge. And he also built an additional 406 miles to reinforce or replace previously existing border barriers. Much of that replacement wall, guys, was significantly bigger and more daunting than the previous barriers. So I think you could argue it should count too. Now, finally, let's play something the vice president said about Trump's 2017 tax cuts.
Sadly, Donald Trump, when he was president, gave tax cuts to the richest, to billionaires and big corporations, which added trillions of dollars to our deficit.
It is absolutely true that, according to independent analysts, the wealthiest Americans got the biggest benefits from those Trump tax cuts. So this Harris claim is not false, but I think it's worth noting something she didn't mention, and that's that Americans of all income levels got tax cuts from this 2017 law. The Nonpartisan Tax Policy Center found in early 2018 that the law, quote, will reduce individual income taxes on average for all income groups and in all states. The think tank estimated that about 65% of households would get a tax cut in 2018, and between 60 and 76% of taxpayers in each and every state. So yes, indeed, the rich were the biggest winners from Trump's tax cuts, but it certainly wasn't just for the rich.
And they couldn't fact check her on anything else because she would not give any answers. She's just all over the place. It's a disaster, guys. It's a disaster. I don't know what else to say. Anyone holding out hope for Kamala you are deranged. Honestly, I believe this. Looking at the numbers, I'm going to do some videos on that today, specifically on Melanie off script. So make sure you are subscribed to my new channel. I appreciate that so much. But we're going to talk about some numbers and how between the polling and early voting, it's a bloodbath. They wanted to talk about Trump talked about a bloodbath. Well, this is the bloodbath. I do believe it's going to be a red wave just on all the metrics. She has lost so many key groups. They are bleeding out. Core groups that she was depending on are not turning up to the polls. And we already know many of them are choosing to vote for Trump. So, yeah, but I don't want to, tell people don't vote and things like that. Make sure you are still voting, because even right now, guys, it looks like Trump will actually win the popular vote on top of the Electoral College. And this right here, I think, put the final nail in her entire campaign. So guys, leave a comment below.
If you're truly a patriotic American, how could you not love Donald Trump? If you actually are somebody that does your research and your due diligence as opposed to being pushed by somebody else's propagandist talking points, how could you hate Donald Trump? He's the most popular businessman in American history. If you wanted a movie to be popular throughout all of before 2016, who has the most cameos? I find it funny that as soon as he became a Republican, he became racist.
Hey, welcome back to the channel. It's your man Wise, and today we're checking out a couple clips. We got one from Nick Shirley. You guys seen that at the beginning, and we're going to finish that clip out. But we also are here to really talk about your favorite CNN host or former CNN host, Don Lemon. He's losing his mind. These liberals cannot believe, they cannot fathom that black men and a whole host of other men out there are deciding to walk away from the Democratic plantation. They just can't fathom it, and they're absolutely losing their minds behind this. Like, share, subscribe, turn the notifications on.
I got to tell you that this election is unlike any other election, okay?
He's absolutely right. Today, here in the state that I live in Maryland, I think a lot of you guys know that, today opened up early voting. today. It started today. So I go to vote. I take my son with me, father-son thing. This was his first time voting. He just graduated high school recently. And I go to vote, early voting. And to my surprise, I pull up and the line is wrapped around. Now I'm thinking this is early voting. I'm going to be able to go get in and get out of there. Nope. Line wrapped around the building. That's how excited, and honestly, that's how important this election is to a whole heck of a lot of people out there. Now, I've voted on a multitude of occasions. You know, this isn't my first rodeo, but it was my son's first rodeo. And so for him to be able to see it, and because it was his first time, and he got, you know, cheers and things of that nature. And I think he was like one of the younger people in the line. And this election is extremely important, and a lot of people care about what's going on. This is early voting season, and the lines are wrapped around the building. It was just, I was blown away. I was surprised.
This is not politics as usual. As we are finding out as we're on the road, the people you think are going to vote for a certain candidate may not be, as evidence in this interview. Watch.
Your feelings, and let me start with the women here, about Kamala Harris.
She's a woman of color. I'm not putting her down because of that, and I'm not putting her down because she's a woman. I'm not a feminist, so I'm sorry. But at the end of the day, I don't think that she has the personality. I don't think that she has what it takes to go up against Putin and go up against these other presidents that are built for this. I don't want to be scared because my president is scared. I want my president to feel secure and manly and about it.
We brought up gender, right? Like, do you think it matters that she's a woman and people aren't comfortable having a woman in a top leadership role?
No, I don't think that, because most men, they love their mothers. They love their wives. So as a woman, most men, they respect the woman, but she just don't have the qualification or the education to really run America, because she don't have the experience. She don't understand our struggles. And for me to believe you for another 4 years, you're crazy.
Right.
Like, you're crazy. You're saying the same thing that you said 4 years ago.
So the fact that she's the vice president,
that's
to
just
you
the
is
bottom line.
You're like, you've been here, you've had a chance.
Yes. Well, for me, the very first time I ever heard the name Kamala Harris, it was in association to locking up parents for truancy. That was the first time I ever heard of her name. And I really didn't understand how this person claims to be a Black woman, but yet she's locking up Black women and Black men and separating families.
This is the thing that is, Trump talks about this a lot. He says, you know, Kamala Harris became Black when it was convenient.
Yeah.
Can you talk to me about, do you agree with him on that? Do you feel like she's wearing her Blackness?
Absolutely. She's sworn into when she sworn to the Senate, it was as the first Indian American.
Thank you.
Which is, it's fine. We don't care.
We all know she's not Black. Let's understand that. We are all clear of that. But my point of view, like I told you earlier, she's already been there. She's in office right now.
Wow. Well, there you go. What do you think?
Hey, did you see the look on his face? And shout out to those sisters there. Shout out to those sisters there, because they got people thinking that Black women are just lockstep with this lady. And the thing is that what we do know is that Black women are mothers, Black women are wives, and they have sons. You know, they have daughters as well. But Kamala Harris, she's been a threat to young Black men. Think about this, man. When she was AG, she hid evidence and kept, you know, a brother on death row. Jamal Truelove, she locked that man up, you know, because they hid evidence, and he got 50 years, and he ended up getting out and suing the state of California, and he won $13 million. Countless brothers locked up that for small amounts of marijuana. One of those, step and fetch it types, one of those, one of those folks that, you are an overseer, or whatever the case may be, whatever you want to call it, one of those Stevens from Django's, you know what I'm saying? That's going to do what you need to do to oppress your people. People just can't understand it. They can't jive with it. And that's the thing. How many times are Democrats going to give us people and tell us that they're Black, just like you, just like me, but they don't come from the same kind of places that we come from. Think about that, man. They gave us Barack Obama, all man to black and the yes we can, and he came in with a pimp, smoking Newports, talking about he smoked the weed and played basketball, this, that, and the third. And then we find out this dude grew up in Indonesia. And we find out that he was raised by his, white grandparents. And none of us really care about that. But he doesn't have, an authentic knowledge of what the black experience is like in this country. And then they turn around and run the same play again with Kamala Harris. You give us a person, yeah, she was born in Alameda County, but raised in Canada. Come on, man. So again, you give us another person, and then you say, oh, yeah, she's black because she's Jamaican, when Jamaica is a country that, that's like saying, oh, you're an American, you must be white. Like, we're not a melting pot here. Like, we don't have people of all types here. Same thing in Jamaica. Same thing in Jamaica. So it's just like these people, they think we're stupid. And a lot of these Democrats out here, they think they own our vote and they think we don't know anything. But like Anton Daniel said, in a clip that I covered earlier today, he said it, man. An informed voter is a dangerous voter to the DNC. Because the reality of it is, once you start doing your research, once you become informed, it's really hard to just vote for them. It's really hard to vote blue no matter who. Very difficult to do that. It just is. But we're going to go check this clip out. We're going to finish this clip here from Nick Shirley. Let's check this out.
Just yelled in the street, Trump 2024. What makes you love Donald Trump?
If you're truly a patriotic American, how could you not love Donald Trump? If you actually are somebody that does your research and your due diligence as opposed to being pushed by somebody else's propagandist talking points, how could you hate Donald Trump? He's the most popular businessman in American history. If you wanted a movie to be popular throughout all of before 2016, who has the most cameos? I find it funny that as soon as he became a Republican, he became racist. But name me that racist that won an NAACP award. I'll wait. Didn't we have peace around the world when Trump was in office? Why are we in war right now? Oh, and for that daggone bill y'all want to keep talking about the border, well, y'all were okay with the administration giving $60 billion to Ukraine so they can put 1,500 at the border. Here's something else deeper for you to think about. Didn't they leave millions and millions of guns in Afghanistan unguarded and unattended and left the country? Directly after that, Xi Jinping and Putin came down and gave them legitimacy. Well, what happens after that? Oh, didn't Biden give Putin access to a gas pipeline? And then directly after that, he went to war with Ukraine. And then was it a coincidence that one of our basketball stars got locked up in Russia and we traded her for Victor Boot? So we traded the Lord of War for Brittany Griner with a whole bunch of unattended guns in Afghanistan. That's what you voted for. That's better than Trump. You need to wake up, bro.
Again, an informed voter is a dangerous voter to the DNC. See, they would prefer that you don't do your own research. They would prefer that you don't take the time to really start to dig and inform and educate yourself. They don't want that. That's their preference. Because the reality of it is, a lot of Black Democrats, I don't think they would continue to support the Democrat Party if they really took the time to do the research on the history of the party.
Salute, man.
And the parties didn't switch. And you'll find that out once you start doing your digging and your research. And the thing is that those of us that have taken the time to do that research, those of us that have taken the time to inform ourselves, it's people like us that are sprinting away from the Democratic Party. And you're seeing it. I mean, think about this. They allowed illegal immigrants to come over here, and they've had interviews with some of the, illegal immigrants, undocumented folks, whatever you want to call them. And even them, if they have children that are born here and are citizens, those people are supporting Trump because they want a solid, positive future for their children, and they don't see that with Kamala Harris, Biden, and anybody else from the Democratic Party. Because a vote for Kamala Harris is a vote against your own interests if you want to have anything in this country. Our young people are graduating college and they're not able to obtain opportunities. Think about that. The job market is trash right now. We've had a plethora of people graduate college and if they can get a job, they're lucky. There's tons of ghost positions out here, posted on LinkedIn and Indeed and all these other sites out there, ghost positions. Go check out some of these places. Go check out some of these sites and see the jobs and see how many people have applied to these jobs. Wages are down based on inflation. During the Trump administration, there were more jobs than people. Think about that. Companies were complaining because they couldn't find enough people to do the work. And we're in a situation right now where it's the complete opposite of that. The number one employer right now throughout this entire administration has been the government, which is essentially just another form of government handout, government aid, welfare, so forth and so on. People are waking up. A lot of the brothers and sisters are waking up, and they're not falling for that banana in the tailpipe anymore. And the Democrats are panicking. Kamala Harris is panicking. The people in her campaign, they're panicking, and they're doing everything that they can. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section. Like, share, subscribe to the channel.
This is a quite shocking clip that we're about to look at, actually coming from MSNBC. They sat down and asked some black people about Kamala Harris, Vice President Kamala Harris at that. And black women was responding to her, presidency, or with the potential presidency, that we would say, in this clip. And, the story has been, she has a problem with black men, black men, black men. Well, after you view this clip, you're probably going to have some sort of also think that she got a problem with black women as well. Let's check that out.
What are your feelings? And let me start with the women here about Kamala Harris.
She's a woman of color. I'm not putting her down because of that. And I'm not putting her down because she's a woman. I'm not a feminist, so I'm sorry. But at the end of the day, I don't think that she has the personality. I don't think that she has what it takes to go up against Putin and go up against these other presidents that are built for this. I don't want to be scared because my president is scared. I want my president to feel secure and manly and about it.
You brought up gender, right? Like, do you think it matters that she's a woman and people aren't comfortable having a woman in a top leadership role?
No, I don't think that, because most men, they love their mothers. They love their wives. So as a woman, most men, they respect the woman, but she just don't have the qualification or the education to really run America, because she don't have the experience. She don't understand our struggles. And for me to believe you for another 4 years, you're crazy.
Right.
Like, you're crazy. You're saying the same thing that you said 4 years ago.
So the fact that she's the vice president,
that's
to
just
you
the
is
bottom line.
You're like, you've been here, you've had a chance.
Yes. Well, for me, the very first time I ever heard the name Kamala Harris, it was in association to locking up parents for truancy. That was the first time I ever heard of her name. And I really didn't understand how this person claims to be a black woman, but yet she's locking up black women and black men and separating families.
This is a thing that is, Trump talks about this a lot. He says, Kamala Harris became black when it was convenient.
Right. Yeah.
Can you talk to me about, do you agree with him on that? Do you feel like she's wearing her blackness?
Absolutely. She's sworn when she sworn to the Senate, it was as the first Indian American.
Thank you.
Which is, it's fine. We don't care.
We all know she's not black. Let's understand that. We are all clear of that. But my point of view, like I told you earlier, she's already been there. She's in office right now.
Now, first of all, the interesting thing about this clip, a lot of those black women were supporting Trump. That's first and foremost. And you've seen black women, you've seen look like some millennial, like Gen X black women that were there. And that is the problem. That is a problem for Vice President Kamala Harris. And the sister toward the end say, no, she ain't black. See, the cosplaying is not working too well. You understand what I'm saying? She has repeated her story 1,000 times. So we know she did not grow up like us in America. Most black Americans, if not all of us, don't have an Indian mom. That's the bottom line. Number two, we wasn't raised with Indian culture. We wasn't. We wasn't traveling back and forth to India. She was raised as an East Indian woman. And that, like I said, and that's okay. Just say you're the South Asian. Just say that. And that's okay. I mean, that has nothing to do if she can do the job or not. Has nothing to do with that. Right? But the cosplaying just get on people's nerves. Then, yes, let's bring that up. You think Vladimir Putin gonna play with her, all that cackling and like Putin not gonna play with her. You're like, oh, he gonna see her coming. You know what I'm saying? President Xi in China, he gonna see her coming. Kim Jong-un in North Korea, he gonna see, like, trust me, they are not gonna take America seriously because they say, oh, that's what they doing? Oh, shoot, man. Now they really about to try America at that point. I mean, let's just call it what it is on the scale of geopolitical politics. It's not just domestic issues the president got to deal with. They also got to deal with international issues. And who do you want if you're dealing with some real conflict? Do you want Vice President Kamala Harris? I don't. I ain't vote for her either. You know what I'm saying? But this, election is definitely something. They keep saying, oh, democracy on the ballot, and they Democrats keep saying that. And I say to Democrats, is democracy on a lease every 4 years? Like, either we got democracy in this country or we don't. Last time I checked, if something can go on a ballot, we vote for it. See, the Democrats, even by that, issue of Roe v. Wade, oh, it needs to be brought back on a federal. They're letting the states vote on it. And if the states want it, they have it. If the states don't want it, they don't have it. It's just that simple, right? But our issues in America has nothing to do with that. Like, that's what I'm saying. She's tone deaf. She don't have a clue of what's really going on in this country. That's why she's focusing on things that nobody's really even thinking about. People thinking about kitchen table issues, light bill, water bill, gas bill being higher, insurance costs, food costs, gas costs, rent a mortgage. You understand? That's the things that they are focusing on, not all the things that she's been focusing on. And a lot of black women have said, hey, enough is enough. Black women are tired of paying these high prices too. And they say, hey, no, she's not it. Because if she was it, we wouldn't be in these problems. We wouldn't have this discussion right now. We wouldn't. If she was really about the business, we would not be talking about any of this. Listen, the Democrats messed up royally. They messed up royally. Because think about it. I'm going to bring this back up again. When they came into office, the majority of black people couldn't stand Trump behind. Couldn't stand him. And now you got black folks want to vote for him? No, the Democrats created that. The Democrats created that. By how horrible they done in that White House. By prioritizing everybody else except black Americans. You really thought that you prioritizing migrants, prioritizing the Asian community with a hate crime bill and all of that, you thought that was going to just black people be like, oh, great, let's go ahead and vote for the Democrats again. You're sadly mistaken. And you didn't invest nothing in black America. That's why you're not going to get nothing out of it. Now, you got some silly black folks that'll vote for her. It is what it is. But the majority, or they say the other ones who waking up, trust me, that silent majority that's coming up in the black community who's not feeling ashamed anymore, because he used to feel ashamed to say these things. Now they're saying it openly, and that's a beautiful thing. Y'all shaming tactics don't work no more, boule. Don't work. None of it works. What do your grandma think? She be thinking, I'm trying to fix these issues and problems in the community. What would they think about you? Vote for a party, don't get nothing. These grandma and grandpa, they did fight for some civil rights. You fighting just to do what? Get nothing? No. My grandparents didn't fight for me to get nothing. And they don't expect me to fight for nothing, to just fight for more or nothing. No, Black people got to look at these elections as what you going to do for me, what I'm getting out of it. And if I'm not getting nothing out of the deal, well, I'm not going to go sit up here and go vote for this person so they can benefit all these other groups. No. Gone are the days where we're voting for people to benefit off our vote. No, if we don't benefit off our vote, then what's the point of voting for you? It's just that simple. Either you do for black folks or that's it. Now, some people always ask, well, you think Trump go do reparations? Biden Harris didn't do it. And you give the majority of your vote to them. It's just that simple, right? It's just that simple. She said she supports a study, which means she supports nothing. I'd rather you not even go that route with reparations with me, and if you just tell me a doggone study and playing with me. Just say, nah, we're not trying to do that right now. But what I can do, I'm gonna try to put some money in your pocket. I'm gonna try to lower your taxes. I'm gonna help you get some jobs. I'm gonna help your businesses. I'm gonna help you get some loans or grants. I'm gonna help you, on an everyday level. That's at least what I can do right now. Not to say we can't do it later, but right now, this what we got to do. And a lot of black folks are saying, yeah, we need that. We need that. Because even if they pay reparations tomorrow, we still will have problems as black Americans. Reparations is not going to be a cure-all to our problems. I hope y'all know that. A one-time payment is not going to cure all your problems. Yeah, for a short term, it may be cool, but if you're the type of person with horrible spending habits, you'll run through that money like water running through your hand. So we got to look at the long-term issues as a community and sustaining ourselves and building our economy. A one-time payment, even though it's old, right? Reparations is old, but I'd rather have a strong economy in Black America. I'd rather have institutions that's created by Black Americans that our economy is sustaining. I'd rather see health centers built in our community, daycare centers, community centers, and sustained by the Black economy. We need an economy, just like these other groups. When they come over here, they focus on what? Their particular economy. They're not focusing on everything else. And Vice President Kamala Harris not even thinking about no economy for Black America. She wouldn't really have a plan to fix anything for Black Americans. So, yeah. But a lot of Black women trust me, I talk to Black women offline, okay? And I'm telling you, there's a lot of Black women that's not feeling her. They are offended by the cosplaying. They're very offended by that. Some of them feel that she's taking the spot from a real freedman, FBA woman who deserved that spot. That's also another thing that a lot of them feeling. And also Black women tired of their pocketbook being hurt. They're tired of that. A lot of Black women look at Vice President Kamala Harris sometimes as that same kind of female that they elevated up on their job. She worked there for years, hard, faithful, on time, and just threw her in here talking about she's Black. And good well that woman ain't Black and she don't treat people like that. Charlemagne and God told us that God is good, and she know how to respond to that. When she was in Jamal Bryant's church, she couldn't even clap on beat. So it's safe to say that woman is not Black. She's not a Black American. She's not a freedman. I can't even say she's Jamaican Black. I wish I could say she's Jamaican Black, but she's not even Jamaican Black. Because Jamaicans are very, secure in their Blackness. Okay. And a real Jamaican when you see one, and that's not it. See, if she was a real Jamaican, and that'd be a different story. If she had a Jamaican upbringing, maybe we would have a different conversation right now about her. But no, you can't cosplay with this woman. That's Obama 2.0. And we learned our lesson from Obama 2.0. Yeah, he may look like a light-skinned Black person, and he may, have a walk or talk, but he was raised by the folks, and he think like them too. That's why he didn't do nothing for Black folk. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, yeah. Shout out to the sisters. Yeah, they not putting up with that, and that's good. I like to see that the sisters aren't playing.
Do you agree that Black men who are not voting for Harris and who didn't vote for you, as the pastor sees it, are misogynist? As he said, misogyny is still real in our community.
I would say, number one, I know it's a shock to everyone, but sexism remains real and a very pertinent issue. But I want us to be really clear that Kamala Harris is doing very well with Black men. Black men are the second strongest cohort of Democratic voters. However, we do have to acknowledge that there is sexism, there is racism, there are challenges in our electorate. And that's why it's so important that Kamala Harris is going everywhere and talking to everyone. She respects voters, she meets them where they are, and she refuses to be told that she has lost a cohort, lost a community, simply because she's different.
So having a different opinion, that makes me a misogynist.
Yep.
See, this is why people can't deal with that party, because y'all just make crazy statements like that.
That's like showing a kid a Barbie movie, a young boy a Barbie movie in class and say, did y'all like that movie? And the boy said, I mean, I didn't really like that movie.
So like
misogynist.
But like I just
Literally the same thing.
I also think about like, are we gonna be screaming the same thing if we talking to other world leaders?
Signs of the season. Macomb County, Michigan. These suburbs just north of Detroit are a blue-collar bellwether. Joseph Knowles about to send a message, about to defy his union leadership, about to vote Republican for president for the first time, about to vote for Donald Trump.
And at this point now, I'm desperate.
Wow.
So I'm willing to try anything right now to make sure that I can fulfill my responsibility and to take care of my wife and kids. That's all I care about.
Knowles is a union auto worker, one of 1,100 just laid off by Stellantis, the parent company of Chrysler Jeep. He blames corporate greed the most, but doesn't stop there.
The second blame, I will put it on Joe Biden and the Democratic Party. Why? Because of the EV mandates. I thought the Democratic Party was for the working class, people, the average Joe like me. That's what I thought.
There are more American auto jobs now than at any point of the Trump presidency. But auto workers supporting Trump here echo his attacks on Biden's clean energy incentives and his claim illegal immigrants are to blame for lost jobs.
But if you do it the wrong way, I think you should get round up and just thrown out. I have no problem with that because it jeopardized my way of providing for my kids if they take jobs.
Knowles waves off friends who call Trump racist, says he doesn't believe Vice President Harris is up to the job, and he spars with family members who say he should stay a Democrat.
Oh, man.
Get back on that plantation, boy. Damn, man, this is crazy, bro. So now he don't care. He don't care about the black folk. He don't care about the black woman. And he's a coon, and he doesn't care about himself and all these other things.
He's a self-hating black man.
He's selfish
he
too,
really
guys.
wants to be a slave, and he wants to serve the white man and vote for Trump because that's what niggas like.
He like white supremacy.
Everything he said was white supremacy talking points.
It's crazy.
My way of providing for my kids if they take jobs.
Knowles waves off friends who call Trump racist, says he doesn't believe Vice President Harris is up to the job, and he spars with family members who say he should stay a Democrat.
Oh, man. I took it from my mom, from my auntie, cousins, my sister. They came at me.
Bill Govier is a 30-plus year union worker at Ford, and he has this side business cleaning car underbodies. When we first visited 4 months ago, he was a fan of Robert Kennedy Jr. Now, he will cast his third ballot for Trump.
RFK joining Trump effectively, I couldn't script it any better the way I would like it to be. I love the idea of Donald Trump being the commander-in-chief. I love the idea of how Donald Trump handles the nefarious characters in the world.
Govier believes more than half of UAW members at his Ford plant will vote Trump. He says Harris laughs too much, and he can't take her seriously.
So what is it? You're the incumbent who wouldn't do anything different, or are you the underdog that wants change?
I like the black guy, man. Hold on, bro. The fact that he said, man, you're voting for a racist. He said, he just has to wave and all. He said, I ain't trying to hear that shit, bro. I'm thinking about my pockets, bro.
Yeah.
And my dad called me this morning talking about, man, bro, I'm hurting, bro. We need Trump back in. I ain't never seen a party say so many lies. Come on, man. Black people seeing this, man.
They are.
Govier believes more than half of UAW members at his Ford plant will vote Trump. He says Harris laughs too much, and he can't take her seriously.
So what is it? You're the incumbent who wouldn't do anything different, or are you the underdog that wants change?
And he says count this early vote in Wayne County for Harris, and count Tonya Rincon as a Democrat who long ago lost patience with Ford co-workers who shrug off Trump attacks on immigrants, on judges, on vote counts, on critics.
There's a lot of people that they just take the crazy with Trump as it's baked in the cake and we're just willing to ignore it. Whereas if we heard that out of our loved ones, we'd be like, okay, Grandpa, it's time to take your keys.
Rincon just retired from the Wayne Assembly Plant and is helping the UAW register and turn out voters. She says her June bet that her local would split 50-50 in a Trump-Biden race is still about right, with Harris now atop the Democratic ticket.
There's a little bit more enthusiasm among some of my female coworkers. A couple of my male coworkers are pretty ambivalent about Harris. We may have lost a tiny margin of support because sexism's a real thing. You know, they're just like, you know, I'm not sure she can do it. I don't think the country's ready for a female president.
Walter Robinson Jr. says there's more energy.
They're saying that after seeing the stuff that she's produced during the campaign.
During the last 3.5 years.
That's just an answer. So why don't you like her anymore? I just don't think we're ready. We're not ready because of her, not because we're sexist.
Is it that we're not ready, or is it that she's just not the best candidate?
Simple as that, man. Yeah.
We may have lost a tiny margin of support because sexism's a real thing. You know, they're just like, you know, I'm not sure she can do it. I don't think the country's ready for a female president.
Walter Robinson Jr. says there's more energy since the switch to Harris, but also more offensive chatter on the assembly line.
They have been saying some very disparaging things about the vice president, things about how she rose up through the ranks and some of the things that she might have done. They only had to say that to me once before they understood they can't say that to me again.
Well, Congressman, this is what John...
Wait, was he
Let's
soft?
hear a real nigga talk, man.
Was he soft?
Huh?
Was he soft or yeah, he was soft.
What do you mean?
Yeah, he was
Like,
bad. They
he
were
was-
talking smack about
Come
this.
on,
Yes.
Harris. Yeah. I thought he was
Yes.
gonna say something else, man.
No.
You a house Negro. That analogy is actually pretty crazy though, bro. Because if you think about it, the house Negro, he don't get his ass whooped. He don't get the lashes. He just, oh, you're a good one. You get to stay in the house, buddy. But the outside, we getting the lashes. We feel them every day. And you feel guilty in your heart walking around. Am I doing the right thing because I support Donald Trump? That burden is weighing over you like a cloud, brother.
It's the easier thing to do to go the other way, you know? But I wouldn't say we taking no lashes because my life is fucking good.
No, hell yeah. I'm just talking. But like, Byron
I don't
taking
give a
these
damn.
lashes.
He ain't taking them physically. That's the
Okay,
difference.
yeah, okay.
These mean
no,
words.
This is the analogy of
Right.
the other
No,
guy.
that is, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
No.
I agree, though.
Nobody in slavery. We just
Yeah, I
saying
know,
though,
I
like
know.
that's
I
what they
see what
doing.
you're saying, yeah.
They keeping
Yeah,
you
yeah.
on the plantation.
Oh,
the
yeah.
Democrat plantation.
Yeah,
You
they
get off,
being good.
Yeah.
You be good
Yeah,
for
good,
massa,
nigga.
and you get to cook the food and bring it out, and
So
you know.
maybe I'm a sexist. Ah!
Do I see you? Do I see you trying to be a free?
He think different. We don't want none of that.
Say that to me again.
Pussy.
Well, Congressman, this is what John King found during a trip. This is what he claims he found during a trip to a Detroit auto factory. Check this out.
On the factory floor, they say there's more racism and sexism now. Before it was just Biden's too old. Now the workers who support Harris say they're hearing more racism and more sexism.
Okay, that's the narrative they're using to explain the lack of support for Harris among working class people, racism and sexism.
No, it's just a joke. And the media, they're the number one culprits in all of this, because for the first 40 to 50 days of her campaign, instead of holding her accountable like you would any other presidential candidate, they treated her like she was a Hollywood actress. We all remember when she wasn't saying anything to anybody and they thought it was the greatest thing ever. Now that the American people's skepticism has turned to rejection, this is where the media goes. But the media, like the Democrats, are the reason why nobody trusts them, because instead of looking at the reality on the ground with wide open borders and massive increases in prices for every good and service, what do? They want to blame shift. They want to deflect.
Yeah.
But hey, that's fine by me. That means Kamala Harris is losing.
Byron be cooking. Chef
Boy,
Byron.
see, you know, man, I'm telling you, bro, when a dude who's speaking like things that he actually, formulated on his own and got facts, opposed to just
scripted,
knowing what it's scripted, knowing what someone's gonna say, is just like, that's why I rock with Byron, bro.
Boy, work for life.
He's their biggest threat. That's Catcher Freeman.
He says Catcher.
He freeing niggas.
He out there with the red hounds.
You get Byron the switch. That's cost a lot of money right there.
Yeah.
Nigga work for life. Low key, we work.
yeah, we work something now, nigga.
That is bad for just thinking logical.
Yeah.
Niggas learned how to read.
Kamala Harris is not a godsend, all right? You people didn't even like her 6 months ago. Now all of a sudden, she's black female Jesus. The way Obama was Black Jesus. And let me tell you something. He had a lot more going for him than Kamala Harris does. And not just as firsts go, but his type of campaigning, his type of persuasion, his charisma, okay? He was imbued with things that she is not. And I don't mean that as a criticism. It's just a point of comparison. And her process fucked her also. There's a convenience in it, but it fucked her also. Because there are a lot of misgivings about her. There's an underlying feeling that she didn't get this the right way. She may not have won a primary. She didn't even make it to the first round of primaries when she did run. And that is both fair and unfair at the same time. But look, this idea of don't say anything bad about her because Trump, I don't buy that. I don't buy that. And it's not how you get to a better place. It's a relative assessment. She has negatives. So does he. Does he have more? Yeah. He also has a way more intense following. That's why this race is so tight. Now explain that to me. Unless you want to write off half this country as bigots, how do you explain it being so tight? Maybe you're not as right about everything as you think you are. Maybe you should be a little bit more open to the people that you disagree with. Maybe they're not all racists.
Yeah, but that is the only argument Trump's going to win because just America's such a racist country, man, and it's so damn horrible here. And these damn fascist elites, and they just, control the minds, and this is just a horrible country. Damn, well, then take your ass somewhere else.
Y'all just went too extreme, bro. That's all it was.
That's what I told you, bro. I wasn't that extreme, bro.
He planted the seed.
Okay, whatever.
I'm forever
We
keep
argued
saying
that a long time.
I'm gonna forever say that.
Yo, KD, that ain't the argument, though. We saying which one was worse.
Kamala worse.
They was worse.
Okay,
sure.
that's all my.
If we asked our viewers, Kamala or Obama, who would y'all vote for if y'all had to? I know y'all wouldn't vote for neither, but if y'all had to vote for one, gun to y'all head.
Obama.
Y'all taking Obama, man.
We lived under Obama.
We all taking Obama.
We don't know. We ain't never lived.
Coming up in this episode.
At a press conference, you telling me that? Like, here's the thing.
See what I'm saying? He did not answer the question. All you do is still talk about Trump. Do you not know that helps Trump? So everyone here knows I love D.L. Hughley, right? Nah, I don't. I'm just saying that. I'm being funny. I do not like D.L. Hughley. Like, you know what, guys? I don't know D.L. Hughley. I think he's a hack. He's a hired hand. He's to help. He's compromised, man. Guys, he's compromised, just like a lot of other people. But it's just he's so vocal. I love Kamala. I would do anything. I sell my kids. I crawl butt naked over a mile of broken glass. I would do it. Nothing I wouldn't do for the epitome of the delusion of the disparaging remarks about Kamala Harris. I would do anything. I can't see why. Woo! So anyway, D.L. Hughley was on. He was interviewing with Big Boy radio show, right? And he said some things about Kamala, about the election, about some stuff. I was like, man, I gotta comment on this again, guys. Check this out. Here goes D.L. Hughley.
Deport them all and saying to who to hang and who to get rid of and who's your problem. And the other one is telling you how they're gonna help you. One is aspirational, one is blame. And that's just a true assessment of it. What is it you want? Like, because even if for the last,
that's not a true assessment of it. That's your opinion of an assessment. Is your opinion based on the information that you've looked at. That's what an assessment is. It's not a such thing as a true assessment. That's your opinion, dog. Somebody else can come in and assess something totally different. Okay? All right, let's keep going. But since D.L. always trying to act like he's so educated and so smart, he just says stuff, and people that don't know about it be like, D.L. is so articulate. He's just so articulate. What grade you go to? 4th grade. D.L. is smart. What's your IQ? 26. I mean, smarter than you. Just say it.
Last month, all you've heard is Venezuelans are taking over apartment buildings, right?
Right.
Haitians are eating dogs.
Right.
And FEMA's cheating you out of the money, right? How does that pay you for groceries?
Right.
How does that put gas in your tank?
The economy.
How does that make the economy any better? What it does is give you somebody to blame.
You know, guys, I think it's important for people to pull their heads out their asses. Yeah, your head, the human head should not go up your rectum. Your head should sit here on your shoulders. Back straight, okay? First of all, that's hilarious about the dogs and the cats and Venezuelans taking over apartments. That's not funny, though. But I will say this, guys. The media did that. You do understand that. The media took something Trump says and makes it front page news. They've been doing that with Trump since 2015. That's how he became president. The media takes something he says in a rambling speech for 2.5 hours and then put it everywhere. And they just take that soundbite. They don't play his speech. There are people in the Democratic Party never saw a Trump speech. Never saw more than 5 minutes or never saw more than 90 seconds of any Trump speech. And he was president. Because all they do is watch CNN and MSNBC tell them about the speech. Or listen to D.L. Hughley tell them and give his honest assessment, the true assessment. Folks, the media does that to highlight what they want to highlight, to create a narrative that makes people feel a certain kind of way. That's what they do. Now, man, talk about somebody eating dogs and cats or Venezuelans taking over this apartment complex or something, or this apartment building that people lived in or live in. Yo, that's not going to put money on your table or food on your table or money in your bank account. But neither is talking about pronouns, tampons in men's bathrooms, pathway to citizenship for everybody who ever wanted to be here, ever. I mean, after we destroyed their home, of course. Kind of throw that in there just a little bit. Make sure people know I understand how this shit works. Destroy where you live, and then be like, hey, come over here. Work for $2. Now, I understand what's happening. But what I'm saying is, what Kamala's talking about ain't about putting money in people's pockets either. We're going to give you a deduction. I don't know about you, but, I mean, I ain't that good at math, but I know a deduction ain't got nothing to do with down payments. And you can't get no business off the ground with no deduction. You have to be in business first. But anyway, the point is, D.L. Hughes going to make up all this stuff. He's saying all these things. And it's really, he's not really mad at Trump. He is mad at, he should be mad at the media because they have created Trump. See, that's how I look at it, because once again, I've been doing this for a long time. I remember looking when I was in a different mind state, and I was looking at all the coverage, all the media coverage they gave Trump. And then I realized Trump knew what he was doing too. He knew the more outrageous statement, the more publicity he would get. And whatever he wanted people not to even know Kamala or Biden or Bernie or Hillary was even there, would just say something crazy. Because the media is so greedy and so corrupt, they're going to cover that for a whole week. Hey, man, it was a guy who was naked. He was sitting in the stadium and he was eating a turkey. What? Yeah, everybody needs to be like Al Capone. We need to make America just like the 30s when the gangsters were shooting people. What? They would cover that all week. Doesn't matter what Hillary said, don't matter what Biden said, they will be covering that all week. So this is a tactic of Trump realizing how the media game works and using it. Man, this thing with cats and dogs. And then we got people like you, DL, who won't let it go. All of you guys, all you do is still talk about Trump. Do you not know that helps Trump? You do understand this, right? You continually talking about him all the time instead of talking about what Kamala's going to do. This whole interview is about Trump. It ain't even about Kamala. And he supports Kamala. But instead of talking about Kamala and how great she is, he spent all his time talking about how ungreat Trump is. And then when people leave, all they think of is Trump, 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 Trump. Trump, 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 Trump. But he's smart, though. He is smart. He should be on CNN all the time. Have his own show. Oh, that's right, he did.
It gives you somebody to hate. For some reason, it happened. And a lot of people are satiated by that.
What about the people that say Kamala doesn't answer the questions?
Well, then I'll say this. You let a goofy-ass white dude dance for 39 minutes while they at a press conference and you telling me that? Like, here's the thing.
See what I'm saying? He did not answer the question. Now, we're not telling you that. Big Boy said, what do you say to people that say, hey?
Some reason it happened. And
doesn't answer. What about the people that say Kamala doesn't answer the questions?
Well, then I'll say this. You let a goofy-ass white dude dance for 39 minutes.
So basically, you won't answer the question. Yeah, she doesn't answer questions, yeah. See how he got, look how mad he got. Look at his face. Arrgh. Don't be asking me nothing that's real. It's true. I ain't quite worked this lie out yet. Haven't worked on that part yet. Man, when I came out here, I thought we weren't going to ask me nothing about her. I thought we were going to just talk shit about Trump. Why you asking me real questions, man? Come on, man. You know I'm not prepared to be honest. I need to keep things the way they are, man. Them Diddy tapes. I'm in some of them Diddy tapes. But let's get to this, guys. Let me debunk this for you. Okay? What D.L. Hughley is talking about here?
Well, then I'll say this. You let a goofy-ass white dude dance for 39 minutes while they at a press conference and you telling me that? Like, here's the thing. And I said this earlier, she is looked at a certain way for just laughing.
Yeah, because she's cringe. She's cringe, bro. She is cringe. She's scary. It is bogus. It's not. There are people that laugh. You make sure want to laugh. But when she laugh, it's not. It's not good. But back to your point. We'll come back to the laugh. Trump was at a rally. And what was it in Pennsylvania? And while he's doing a rally, right, he's doing a Q&A. And while he's doing this, it's a 2.5 hour rally. During the rally, 2 people become ill. So they have to stop. They can't just talk over people being ill and medics and all this stuff. So they start playing music. And it's some good music. To them. And they start, you know, Trump. You know, Trump. What's that shit? Come on. This is good. Come on, yeah. This is what I'm talking about. Come on. He's dancing and the music's playing and people are singing and they're having a good time at the rally for about a half an hour. They just made it fun. It's a good time. He spoke for 2.5 hours. For 30 minutes, they didn't. They try to make that seem like that's the worst thing in the world, to go to a rally, it be interrupted by for medical reasons, for 2 people, and then for you to play music and everybody have a good time and just hang out and chill and be unscripted, DL. You know, which your candidate can't do. Be unscripted. Just talk. Just be human. Be a person.
Salute.
And just hang out with people. And just talk. It's like a town hall event. And people just enjoyed themselves. Also, after he went back to speaking. Okay, so that's the first thing. So this is fake news. And they've been riding this. They ain't got nothing else to say. This is fake news. That's the first thing. Fake news. This rally was a good time for people that went there. They enjoyed themselves, whatever. Here's the other thing. I did some research. I know, right? I always do research. Watch your mouth. But check this out. Do you know since September until like the first week of October, Trump has done about 30% more rallies than Kamala. Yeah, like 30% more. He's done, now this is up to the first week of October now. He's done, 21 rallies, and she's done 15. Okay, so he does longer rallies. He does longer rallies than Kamala. He does more of them. All things that D.L. Hughley won't bring up. He won't bring up the fact that Kamala does less rallies. She spends less time on the stump when she's at rallies. And then she's scripted as hell. These are not positives. These are what we call negatives. And they're part of the reason why people do not connect with her. Once again, I think people that like Kamala don't like Kamala. They like the idea of anybody but Trump, and they like the idea of a woman. And some people like the idea of a black woman. And I guess some people might want the idea of an Indian woman. I don't know. But you get what I'm saying? But it's not her. Because she can't go off book. She couldn't just play the music, okay, and we just have a good time. That's charisma. That's being a show person. That's being cool and comfortable in your skin. To be 77 at a rally and just be comfortable having a good time, man, with the people. Like, that's dope. They made it a negative because the person can't do it. That's sort of like the trick. Like, if you can't do something, the best thing to do is have disdain for it. Yeah, you gotta say, I wouldn't want to do that. I would never want to do that. Who would? That's stupid to do that. Because you can't do it. It's like, when the new dances come out, back when I used to do new dances, you couldn't do the dance, you'd be like, I don't want to do that. Like the line dancer, Mrs. Black now to do all the line dances. I'd be like, oh, that's stupid, man. That's the ladies. I don't do that. Brother, do two-step. You know what I'm saying? We just two-step. You know what I'm saying? Ain't got to be doing all that. I be doing them line dancing. Take it to the side. Do the work. See, that's not me, right? And so, since I can't do them, because I don't have the patience to learn that shit, I'm like, man, guys don't do that. Because that's the protection mechanism. That's the defensive mechanism when you can't do it. So what I'm saying is, Kamala Harris can't go off the book. Kamala Harris does less rallies, and she's not as comfortable as Trump. Trump's been, and to his credit, Trump has been doing them since 2015. So he's so much more comfortable doing it, he don't give a damn. I come out here and do a show for 2 hours with no script, just a couple notes. I'm good. Everybody can't do that. Kamala can't do what I do. Okay? She can't do this. She can't come to y'all, or she would have been doing it. Because she could have had a podcast when she was VP. Why didn't she have a podcast and talk to people? Why wasn't Kamala on podcasts or shows the entire time she's been in office? Building a relationship with the Black community, building a relationship with working people, building a relationship with all people, right? Why wasn't she already doing that? Is there some type of rule book that says a vice president can't go on podcasts, can't talk? Why didn't she do it? Because it's not her wheelhouse. She's used to things being given to her, like vice presidency, like nominations out of Democratic Party, DNC, nomination. Willie D, the D. You know what I'm saying? Like Willie Brown. I'm sorry, not Willie D. My bad, D. My bad, Willie. Willie Brown. So it is what it is. So this whole thing about this thing with D.L. Hughley, it's just horrible, guys. It's horrible.
Right. Do you know why there is a psychology behind laughing? You ever heard of the story, the expression, more fun than a barrel of laughs?
Mhm.
Well, that comes from parts of the Midwest and the South where Black people had to laugh in barrels because white people didn't want to see them laughing.
Gotcha. Damn.
Because laughing seemed subversive to them. It seemed like, why are you laughing when there's so much you don't have to laugh about? It seemed like it was subversive. And you see that same thing in her. Remember how angry they would get when she would laugh?
Mm-hmm.
They would get mad. They would say, well, that's hysteria. Why is she laughing? That's signs of her senility. It's erratic for her to laugh. But that's
no, man, it's there's nothing funny. It's nothing funny. First of all, this is the worst. This is the worst, right? This is what Democrats do. They take an actual thing that Black people had to deal with and they bastardize it. They manipulate it to use it for their own gain. D.L. Hughley's going to go back in history, grab something that happened in Jim Crow times, bring it forward 80 years later, and use it to help Kamala make an excuse for her being goofy and laughing when ain't shit funny. Get what I'm saying? He go back in time, laughing in the barrel. There's a saying that happened. I don't know if it happened, but I know I've heard about this Jim Crow, obscure Jim Crow law that Black people couldn't laugh in public. White people be like, what you laughing at? Y'all plotting? Anyway, so you had to put your head in this barrel and laugh in the barrel. He's saying that Kamala can't laugh because it made people uncomfortable. No, she's scary. And she seems insincere. She does not seem genuine. And she laughs at things that aren't funny. Like, if someone makes a joke and you laugh, that makes sense. But if someone's talking and it's like, hey, man, how you doing, man? I'm doing okay, man. How's your day going, man? It's going okay. Yeah, man, it was a plane crash. It was a plane crash. A plane crash, yeah. You be looking at him like, what the hell? That's Kamala. Kamala laughs at times that don't make sense to the normal person. And they're like, why is she laughing? Now, if you were at a Chris Tucker, I like Chris Tucker. Me and Mrs. Black would see Chris Tucker last year. Funny guy at the MGM National, Harbor. Funny. When we saw Dave Chappelle, funny. If you at a Dave Chappelle concert or Chris Tucker concert, Corey Holcomb, shout out to 5150 Club, you there, you watching Corey turn down, you can laugh. Nobody would be like, why is she laughing? She must be senile. Hell, you could be at a Bill Burr concert. You could be at a Bill Burr concert, a Theo Von concert, and you could laugh there. Be like, that's funny. That's a good one, man. That's a good one. No one would be like, what are you doing? And laughing at the comedy show. But see, Kamala laughs when it doesn't make sense. And that makes people uncomfortable. And it seems phony as hell. And if you're the one talking, you're supposed to make other people laugh. You should not be laughing louder than everyone else all the damn time. These are rules of like society, D.L. Hughley. This is not because she's Black. This is, oh, I'm Indian or whatever. It's not because she a woman. It's not because she a Democrat. There are rules. When she says something and she starts laughing and no one else is laughing, that's bad form, sir. If you're a person, she's a public figure, dude. She ain't learned this yet. If you're a public figure, slow down. Let other people laugh a little bit at your shit first. You should induce others into laughter. You should not be just laughing and I crack me up. And the other person's like, I didn't see anything funny at all. I digress. It is shameful, guys. It's shameful that dear Hughley would sit here, use our trauma, use historical trauma of Black people, drag it into a situation that has nothing to do with it, and use it to try to prop up his good friend Kamala Harris. That is something that is repugnant.
He's the guy who also wants to replace every civil servant, every single one. Thinks he has a right under the Supreme Court ruling on immunity to be able, if need be, if it was the case, to actually physically eliminate, shoot, kill someone who he believes to be a threat to him. I mean, so I know this sounds bizarre. It sounds like if I said this 5 years ago, you'd lock me up. We got to lock him up.
Uh-oh. Biden just accidentally suggested that Trump should be locked up, but he does, to his credit, try to clarify. Let's see if he does a good job. Take a look.
Political lock him out. Lock him out. That's what we have to do.
Okay, so he clarifies. It's clear. He says politically lock him up. Look, I don't think that what happened there was a sign of his mental decline. I mean, when you're speaking off the cuff, sometimes you misspeak, and then he immediately clarified. So I don't want to be too hard on him for that moment, but it didn't work out in Kamala Harris's favor because, of course, the Trump campaign capitalized on it. They used it to their advantage. And I want to show you what I mean. So the Trump War Room on Twitter posted, Joe Biden just said the quiet part out loud. We got to lock President Trump up. And, if you've paid any attention to Trump's campaigning, what he's been doing is, of course, making himself out to be a victim of lawfare, someone that the Democratic Party wants to throw in prison. And to be fair to Trump, there have been prominent Democrats who have talked about wanting to throw him in prison. It's just that this particular campaign event was not an example of it. Now, Biden's fumble came as he was speaking in New Hampshire this week on Tuesday. And now current and former administration officials are basically trashing him. Okay, so just pause and absorb what I just said. Current and former Biden administration officials are now trashing him. Okay. So Alex Thompson, who's a reporter over at Axios, mentioned that a former Biden official texted him and said some pretty damn harsh stuff. Okay, so noting this could be politically unhelpful to Harris, a former Biden administration official texts me, quote, "We got to lock Joe up." And then he followed that up with someone who's currently in the Biden administration. A counterpoint from a current Biden administration official, for better or worse, no one is listening to him anymore, and his words have little power and less reach. It's a blip, gone in any meaningful way by midday tomorrow if it makes it that long. Okay, that's also not a good thing to say, because remember, Joe Biden is currently the president of the United States. And when you put out a statement about how no one listens to him, like no one takes this guy seriously anyway, yeah, that doesn't really inspire a lot of faith in Americans. that the country is being led by the person who got elected in 2020. So that was a stupid statement to put out, but they did it. And it's a current Biden administration official. Now, to her credit, Harris isn't playing into the lock him up chants. Apparently, there was a recent campaign stop where some of the rally goers started chanting lock him up, meaning lock Trump up. And here's what Kamala Harris said. She stopped it. And she says, hold on, the courts are going to handle that part of it. What we're going to do is beat him in November. And then the crowd went wild and cheered. Now, I want to talk a little bit about something that's come out as a result of Bob Woodward's latest book, War, where he basically details how Biden's behavior at donor events all the way back to last summer, the summer of 2023, were concerning to the donors. They were worried about his mental fitness. So a full year before the American people were aware of just how bad Biden's mental decline was as a result of that horrible debate performance, you have the richest people in this country, Democratic donors, fully aware of how concerning his condition was. How is that right? I mean, think about that. It would have been far better for everyone to know the truth earlier. It would have been far better for Biden to not run for a second term and to allow for a robust primary process. So the best possible candidate would be the Democratic nominee running against Donald Trump. But we didn't get that opportunity. And we didn't get that opportunity because a lot of people provided cover for Biden and lied on his behalf. So let's go to some excerpts from his book. The first fundraiser hosted by Kevin Scott, the chief technology officer of Microsoft, at his home in Los Gatos in June, or on June 19th, was attended by 38 guests, including some of the most serious / wealthy Democratic donors in the Valley. The event raised $2.7 million for Biden's reelection fund. Guests, however, said that Biden was frighteningly awful. It was like your 87-year-old senile grandfather wandering around the room saying to women guests, "Your eyes are so beautiful." A donor acknowledged he had probably woken up very early, but appeared tired. He could not wait to sit down and only took 2 prearranged questions. He carried a handful of note cards with the answers printed out, but even then seemed to wander off point. But Biden was allegedly very energetic at another event later that day. I don't know what happened, but the people who were at that event claimed that he seemed perfectly fine. But then there were other troubling signs about a week later, according to Bob Woodward's book, War. So there was another fundraiser that took place on June 27th, 2023. Guests described their interactions with Biden as painful. Great. So Bill Reichblum, who's a co-founder and president of Liberty's Journal Foundation, who attended the event, said that he never completed a sentence. He would start to talk about something, jump somewhere else. He told the same story 3 times in exactly the same way, and it meandered so much. Frankly, my impression was there were times it was as though that we didn't exist. Jesus, so bad. He was just rambling and talking as to what came into his head. Biden seemed to him like an elderly grandparent or a parent who talks and talks but makes no sense. And so I want to know why all the people who lied to us in the press haven't been fired. I'm being serious. I'm not kidding. And I usually don't call for people to be fired because I don't want people's livelihoods to be in jeopardy. But usually I'm talking about normal people, not incredibly wealthy individuals like the hosts of Morning Joe, who lied to us, who in fact continue to lie to us even after that horrible debate performance. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, why don't we take a look at Mika Brzezinski from Morning Joe, who immediately downplayed Joe Biden's horrific campaign performance, debate performance. Let's take a look.
President Biden let every fastball hanging out over the plate go right by for a strike for Donald Trump. So that was an indication that he was just not up to it last night.
Okay.
Okay, hold on a second. That I agree with everything you said, except for the last part of it. Everybody calm down, and I'll tell you why. I mean, it's fine to not spin what happened last night, and we're not going to.
But by the way,
he had
Mika,
a terrible night.
Mika, everybody's calm here.
No,
you're the only one raising your voice.
No,
Everybody is calm here.
But again, it's the let's just immediately pull this. Let's end this. Let's find someone else.
Yeah, they should have. They should have immediately found someone else. And by found someone else, Biden should have immediately stepped down. Look, I get it was his decision to make, and there had to be a tremendous amount of pressure for him to do that. But it would take him a month to finally make the correct decision. And what he basically did is kneecap his replacement candidate, because that was another month of campaigning. That was another month that maybe there could have actually been, some sort of primary process where voters would get to decide. But here we are. I mean, it's just so frustrating that people still watch that show and take these people seriously. Now, Mika and Joe tried to provide cover for Biden repeatedly. That wasn't the only example. Take another look.
By the way, it's very funny. David Axelrod a couple nights ago was going through when Joe Biden spoke on Sunday night, he cut a word off, and David Axelrod, of course, had to bring that up,
and then got someone's name wrong.
And then got somebody's name wrong. So does David Axelrod need to get off of TV? I mean, this happens. Media people keep going, oh, Joe Biden confused names. Then they throw to somebody and they confuse the name.
We know we do that, but then he also in that news conference talked about his.
How do people take them seriously at all? But it's not just Mika and Joe. I mean, Mika's got a personal relationship with Joe Biden, and she allowed that personal relationship to get in the way of being honest and truthful with her audience. It's interesting because I know of an actual journalist who recently was let go from a big publication, New York Magazine, for having a personal relationship that she didn't disclose. And that personal relationship, upon review of her work, had no impact on her reporting. Everything she reported was accurate and truthful. She got fired anyway. Yes, I'm talking about Olivia Nuzzi. She gets fired. Mika Brzezinski lied on behalf of her friend. She's still employed. People trust her. And if you trust her, man, I've got a bridge to sell you. Amazing. But they're not the only ones. Here's Lawrence O'Donnell, weighing in on Biden's mental health after he gave a speech at a NATO conference. Take a look.
What followed was nothing less than the most masterful, televised presidential press conference about foreign policy. There have been other presidential press conferences that have exhibited mastery at different points by some presidents, but on foreign policy, complex foreign policy, involving the Middle East and the situation in Ukraine, this is as good as it gets.
I can't. I really can't. Like, how do people watch this garbage? Total slop. I mean, they lied to you. They lied to all of us. I mean, I knew they were lying as they were doing it. We covered these videos and we were outraged by it. But did they think they were helping the Democrats? They weren't helping the Democrats. Just so utterly pathetic.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. I really appreciate it. Another way to
We are in the end stage right now for the US dollar. Those aren't my words. Those are the words of top economists who are admitting that the US is out of options. They've run all the plans. They've tried all of the strategies and they've now failed. More on that part in a second. But first, no one in the corporate media, the legacy media, you can turn on CNBC, you can turn on any of the corporate media. No one is talking about this. And no one mentioned this yesterday really at all. And that is that gold prices hit a brand new all-time high, closing at $2,748 an ounce. All-time high. Why? Why is the corporate media totally silent on this? It's kind of deafening how the silence is right now. It's really bizarre, actually. Why do you think? I mean, I'll ask you guys in the comments, why do you think is the corporate media totally ignoring the death of the US dollar? Why? Just drop me a comment. I want to hear about it. Is it because the corporate media doesn't want to admit the US dollar is in decline, or that it represents a failure of the Biden administration's sanctions against Russia, which they were all pushing for? And they were all championing, oh, we got to sanction Russia, sanction Iran, sanction China, sanction everybody. But sanction Russia specifically, boy, did that really come back to bite us in the ass. So, or is it some other reason? There's also zero legacy media coverage right now of the BRICS summit in Russia. You could turn on any of the corporate media. No one's mentioning it. You think Lester Holt or David Muir tonight on the 6 o'clock news is going to mention it? No, they're not talking about it at all. Silence.
Are you talking about North Korea and Russia?
Something is happening right now, and it's wrapping up in the next day in Russia is the BRICS summit, the 2-day summit led by Vladimir Putin. Xi Jinping is there. Over 20 different major countries are there right now. On the top agenda item from Putin and China is to get rid of the US dollar. To start settling these transactions to run their countries using their own currencies and a BRICS currency backed by gold and silver. Chinese leader Xi Jinping urging BRICS to lead urgent international finance reform, he says. He told the conference this is urgent, not like, hey, let's do this next year. Like, we need to get this done now, China is saying. Why is China dumping U.S. treasuries like a bad date? They're getting out of style right now. They don't want U.S. treasuries. They've been dumping them like crazy.
Now, this is not something world leaders normally do. So when you talk about South America, and they're thinking about making their own currency, much like the euro, and they're saying this is a 5-year type project. Like, it'll take 2 years to research it. It's going to take 2 years to have conferences about it, then another 2 years to implement. That's how the euro took a decade, right? And so he's saying we can do this now, and we should.
Right now. And by the way, they've been researching it. They have all the ducks in a row. They've been acquiring as much gold as they possibly can get their hands on, because this currency, this BRICS currency, will be backed by gold primarily and other commodities like oil, natural gas. Unlike the US dollar, which is backed by nothing, it's backed by debt. We went off the gold standard, of course, in 1971. So it's not backed by anything. It's backed by the full faith and credit of the US military and aircraft carriers. That's it. So Putin, just a few moments ago, calling for the alternative international payment system at the BRICS summit. Again, you won't see this in your corporate media. Turn on Hannity tonight and you're not going to see this. Turn on Alex Wagner and you're not going to see this. This is huge news. Vladimir Putin has opened the expanded BRICS summit by issuing a call for an alternative international payment system that could prevent the United States using the dollar as a political weapon. But the summit communique indicated that little progress had been made on the alternative payment system. Speaking at the summit in the Russian city of Kazan, Putin said, "The dollar is being used as a weapon. We really see that this is so. I think that this is a big mistake by those who do this." He said that nearly 95% of trade between Russia and China is now conducted in rubles and the yuan. So the groups, most of our audience probably understands what BRICS is doing, but if you're new here, let me know in the comments. Are you new here? Have you never watched our show before? Thank you. We'll welcome you. Just type new. We'd like to welcome you. But let me explain. So BRICS is an economic alliance. It's made up of 5 major emerging economies: Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. Emerging in a big way. I mean, if you think about the United States as the dollar dominant, so these are emerging in that way. But dozens of other countries have now joined as well, including this year. You have Iran has joined. The United Arab Emirates, home of Dubai, basically the most important city probably in the world right now is Dubai. That they've now joined. They're now part of this alliance. And more countries are joining as we speak. So the group's primary focus is on cooperation in areas like trade, finance, development, of course, to challenge Western-dominated institutions like the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, the World Bank. So the IMF and the World Bank, by the way, they use the dollar to basically threaten and control other countries, like we've done in Ukraine. Hey, take out a loan with the World Bank, and you'll be in debt to us for 100 years, and we will control everything that you do in Ukraine.
Well, think of what we've done to Iran, which would be a major motivation to join something like BRICS. Is we said, we don't like you, Iran. We think you have nuclear weapons. We don't really feel the need to prove it We just think that you do, and we like saying it out loud. So your kids don't get antibiotics. You cannot buy these types of things. You can't buy the infrastructure to build out any kind of progress in your country. You just can't have it because we've decided, because we like it. So we literally have decided who lives and dies, who gets surgeries and who doesn't, because they need to buy those supplies on the US dollar. So we use it to kill people. So I can see why they would not want that.
Yeah, like we were in Egypt talk to Egyptians about how their access to medicines under U.S. sanctions, right? And using these sanctions as a cudgel, as a weapon, and using the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank as a weapon.
There's a reason they're called sanctions of mass destruction. And that obviously is very motivating to not be a victim to that if you are any country that's not the United States.
So one of the BRICS long-term goals is to reduce their reliance on the U.S. dollar and in international trade, allowing countries to use their own currencies instead of the U.S. dollar, and creating a BRICS currency that is backed by gold and other commodities, as I mentioned, gold and oil and natural gas. And make no mistake about it, this is exactly why the United States wants to go to war with Russia. It's about U.S. dollar hegemony. That's it. It's about the power of the world's reserve currency. That's it. The U.S. dollar is a major problem, though, for Russia and China right now. Here's Business Insider explaining how they're dealing with the fact that this still has to deal with the U.S. dollar at the conference. Putin's dollar problems on clear display at the BRICS summit, starting with the moment guests land at the airport. So Russian President Putin is hosting a major summit with more than 20 world leaders, whom he's trying to convince to ditch the dollar. De-dollarization is one of Putin's priorities because trading in local currencies would mean a heavily sanctioned Russia wouldn't be beholden to Western U.S. dollar-dominated global financial order. But it's not easy to move away from the greenback. The organizers of the conference have advised foreign attendees to bring cash, specifically U.S. dollars and euros, to the event in the Russian city. So Russia, basically, you can read it right on their website if you want. I did. Here's their website. Here's the BRICS website. If you don't believe me, or if you think this is like fake propaganda, this is the BRICS own website. And right here in text, it specifically says you cannot withdraw rubles or foreign currency at the ATM if you bring like a MasterCard or Visa from another country. And only cash in US dollars or euros can be freely exchanged for cash in rubles in most banks in Russia. So basically, what they're saying is bring US dollars and then convert them to rubles, and you will be allowed to do that here. So they're still dealing with this sort of thorn in the side. Economics professor Richard Werner says we are at the end stage right now for the US dollar. The US has tried everything else, bombing Iraq when Saddam Hussein wanted to move to settle oil transactions in the euro, bombing Libya when they wanted to do the same thing, move away from the US dollar to settle oil transactions. So we bombed them. So now that BRICS is creating its own trade bloc and ditching the US dollar, the US proxies like Japan and Germany are having to support the collapse of the US dollar using their own economies right now, which are in the toilet, to prop up this US dollar. So if you're sitting there watching this right now, what you must understand is it's all a charade. The US dollar is not strong. It's being propped up by the economies of Germany and Japan and Canada. And this is all about to collapse. Watch.
So the real story is that in this late stage, with this national debt explosion, the debt rising exponentially in the US, we are heading, this is end game sort of stage. We're heading to some kind of, crisis or alternative exit strategies. I'll come to that. But it also means that, in this late stage, essentially, the U.S. is pulling all the stops out, and that means the allies, the vassal states in the U.S. Sphere of influence, particularly Germany, Japan, have to pay for this. So their economies are being cannibalized; they're being demolished. We're witnessing the essentially intentional dismantling of what used to be strong and successful economies in Europe, particularly Germany and in Japan. We've seen it for 20 years. While at the same time, the central banks in these countries are taking policies that will bolster the dollar. Why is the yen so weak? Well, this is to make the dollar strong. So the dollar has stayed strong at the expense of Japan in particular, and European countries and their artificially weak currencies to give this sort of illusion of some kind of remaining dollar strength. But you see in the gold price.
So he goes on to talk about gold price. Of course, gold hitting a new all-time high, and he thinks it's going to go much, much higher, does Professor Werner. So does Peter Schiff. So many other economists. Bank of America just published, they believe it's going to hit over $3,000 an ounce. So why is that?
Well,
so in other
as
words,
Thomas Massey points out, the reason we can sustain such a high debt, that federal debt, is because we get a portion of all global trade because it's on the US dollar. So if we no longer have that, will we have to deal with that federal debt, which is skyrocketing as we speak?
Right. Yeah. I mean, we just had a new record of federal interest debt on the federal debt. Like, so just the interest payments alone now are over $1 trillion. Just the interest payments on the $35 trillion in debt. So if you are paying attention for your own family and you're thinking about, like, what can you do to protect yourself? I mean, again, tangible, real assets. We talk about gold, we talk about silver, we talk about real estate on this show. But if your family's future, your 401k or your IRA or your savings account is tied to the US dollar, like you think the US dollar is going to go up and that's going to protect your family for the next 15 years, you need to really have a heart-to-heart with your spouse or something and sit down and really talk about this and look at the data right now around the US dollar and what's about to happen. It's being artificially propped up and they are lying to you. And this is why the mainstream media is ignoring the story, because it's really bad for the Democrats right now. Someone in the
BRICS meeting as we speak, although maybe they're having dinner as we speak. But I also want to ask you a few questions about Israel. The killing of Yahya Sinwar, the longtime combative leader of Hamas, is this a substantial victory for Israel? Is it merely a PR victory for Israel, or is it the elevation of Mr. Sinwar to iconic and heroic status, which is a help to Hamas?
Well, I think it clearly is a help to Hamas. I think he has been elevated and will continue to be elevated to iconic status in the sense that he went down fighting. The Israelis like to portray him as something of a moral coward who was hiding in tunnels and willing to send other Hamas fighters out to engage the IDF while he stayed safely behind in a hiding place. But that's obviously not true. And the fact that he went down fighting, I think, will do great things for his status. I'm not sure any of this makes much difference on the overall course of events involving Hamas and the IDF. I mean, the IDF has a rich history, or the Israelis have a rich history of assassinating leaders, not just Hezbollah leaders, but Hamas leaders as well. And it's never had much effect one way or the other. Decapitation is just not a strategy that produces significant political outcomes. So I think in the overall scheme of things, this does not matter much.
Has the IDF defeated Hamas?
No, there's no question that they have not. And they're continuing to battle them, not only in northern Gaza, but in other places in Gaza as well. And the fact is that Hamas has avoided large-scale engagements with the IDF, where the IDF would have an opportunity to kill large numbers of Hamas fighters all at once. And instead, you've had a lot of small engagements. The Hamas engages in hit and run attacks on the Israelis, and they have not lost that many men. But furthermore, there's a huge population of young males young Palestinian males in Gaza that Hamas can draw on to sort of replenish the ranks. So the idea that you're going to finish this group off once and for all is delusional.
I'm going to play two clips for you from the American Secretary of State.
Revolutionary salute to our brother Slug Life 7 for the donation to the war chest. Revolution is a way of life. I absolutely appreciate the love, family. Salute to you.
Of dubious credibility. Nevertheless, he has a different view on this. I'd love your comments. So, Chris, let's do cut number 16 first. This is from yesterday, and then cut number 5, which is from earlier today.
Israel has achieved most of its strategic objectives when it comes to Gaza, all with the idea of making sure that October 7th could never happen again. In the space of a year, it's managed to dismantle Hamas's military capacity. It's destroyed a bunch of its arsenal. It's eliminated its senior leadership, including, most recently, Yahya Sinwar. This has come at the cost, great cost, to Palestinian civilians in Gaza. Now is the time to turn those successes into an enduring strategic success. And there are really two things left to do. Get the hostages home and bring the war to an end with an understanding of what will follow.
This is a moment for every country to decide
small hat
what role it's prepared to play and what contributions it can make in moving Gaza from war to peace. And as I said the other day, I think this is a pivotal moment for that question because Israel has accomplished the strategic goals that it set out for itself, making sure that October 7th and the horrors can never happen again by effectively dismantling the organization of Hamas. It succeeded in doing that and bringing to justice its leaders, those who, notably Sinwar.
Does he sound more like an international diplomat or more like a lawyer for Benjamin Netanyahu?
Well, he's two things. One, he's Israel's lawyer. And number two, he's delusional. I mean, it's just hard to understand what he's talking about. Israel has two stated goals in Gaza, and then a third goal, which they rarely state, which is the most important goal. The first goal was to defeat Hamas decisively, finish them off. The second goal was to get the hostages back. And the third goal, which is rarely stated, but is the key goal, is to ethnically cleanse Gaza, drive all the Palestinians out. Number one, they have not decisively defeated Hamas. I don't know what he's talking about. The fighting goes on. Second, they have not gotten the hostages back. And third, they have not ethnically cleansed Gaza. And in the process, they are committing genocide. And he is complicit in a genocide. Now, he talks about the time being ripe for creating a ceasefire, getting some sort of meaningful peace agreement and putting this war behind us. He has done nothing. His boss, President Biden, has done nothing to make that happen. In fact, what we do is support Israel at every turn. Again, he is Israel's lawyer, pure and simple.
What is your view of the significance or the impact of the release last Friday of two top secret documents, which have every indication of being realistic, which are an American intelligence assessment of the Israeli government's plans to attack Iran, which reveal that the U.S. does not share all of its secrets with the other four eyes of the five eyes, and which casually referred to, as if everyone knows it exists, the Israeli nuclear weapons.
Yeah, it was very interesting that the document acknowledged, one of the documents acknowledged that Israel has nuclear weapons. We go to great lengths not to acknowledge that because it would have all sorts of consequences in terms of American law. That's what we could give Israel in terms of aid. Also, I listened to Larry Johnson on the show tell fascinating stories about, who can see the various paragraphs in one of the two key documents. And, it was quite interesting, to put it mildly. My take on the document is that it just doesn't tell you very much. I'm not sure I'm right, but I want to know what the document has to say about what the ultimate target set looks like. In other words, what are the Israelis planning to hit? Are they planning to hit the nuclear sites? Are they planning to hit the oil refineries and the oil fields? Are they planning to hit missile factories, population centers? This is the key question. All the document seems to say is that they're going to attack Iranian radars and intelligence installations. And I find this hardly surprising because the Israelis have to cut a corridor into Iran. They have to take out, air defense sites. They have to take out radars, no matter what the ultimate target set is. And all the documents tell us is that they're going to go after those sorts of targets, but they don't tell us whether the Israelis are going to ultimately go after the nuclear sites or the oil refineries or what have you. So I don't think you can tell altogether that much from the documents. I don't think they are that revealing. And I don't think they help Iran in any meaningful way to defend itself. I may be missing something here, but I just don't think the documents are that big a deal. Go ahead.
Well, here's Sir John Sowers, who's the former head of MI6, with his opinion on what the Israelis are about to do and can do. And this statement that he made, which we'll play for you in a moment, Professor, came out after the documents were released. Chris, number 13.
The defense minister perhaps got ahead of himself when he implied there would be some form of intelligence operation, some form of cyber operation against Iran. The Americans have clearly been trying to restrain Israel. The Israelis might see an opportunity to strike Iran's nuclear facilities. Obviously, one of our biggest concerns has been Iran's slow but gradual process towards acquiring nuclear weapons. But in order to strike these nuclear facilities, which are deep underground, under meters of concrete, they need the weaponry that only the United States can supply. So I think what we will see is some form of cyber attack against the nuclear facilities, possibly coupled with missile strikes against military facilities, but leaving a major strike, a major kinetic strike against either nuclear or oil facilities on one side, not pursuing that route.
That makes sense to you?
Yes, that makes sense to me. But I would just say he, in effect, is saying what I just said, that he doesn't know what the ultimate target set looks like. And he was speculating that they would not go after the nuclear sites, for example. I think that's correct, because as he pointed out, the Israelis by themselves cannot take out Iran's nuclear capabilities. They need the United States. So I think it doesn't make sense at this point for them to go after the nuclear sites. And I would imagine on the oil fields and the oil refineries, the United States has gone to great lengths to tell them not to do that, because it might have huge negative economic consequences, huge negative consequences for the international economy. And that's the last thing we need, especially before the election, if you're Joe Biden.
Right.
So I don't think those two target sets are likely to be the ones that the Israelis go after, which is what that gentleman from Britain was saying.
Do you think these documents that were released on the Telegram site were a stunt to give the Iranians the false impression that they knew what the Israelis were up to? Or do you think it was a real genuine American document of American intel spying on the Israelis, released by someone who's either a whistleblower or wants to prevent World War III or wants to delay the attack until after Election Day?
Yeah, I don't think it was a stunt. It seems to me that this was someone trying to spook the Israelis and get them to delay the attack. And that is what has happened. The Israelis have made it quite clear that they're thinking long and hard about what to do in the wake of these documents being put out in public. So I think that was the basic goal of someone. The interesting question is whether or not it was sort of a rogue person inside the American national security community, or it was somebody at the highest level who wanted to leak these documents to slow the Israelis down. I mean, you can tell a plausible story about how someone at the highest levels would want to slow the Israelis down, given that we have a presidential election next week. And it may be the case, actually in 2 weeks, and it may be the case that the Israelis could do something that would damage Kamala Harris's chances of winning.
I think we'll know if it was a rogue or if it was official, which is what Larry Johnson has suggested, but whether or not anybody's prosecuted. If it's somebody high up, they'll just make all kinds of excuses. Like when Justice Alito's draft opinion invalidating Roe versus Wade was leaked, there were only 30 human beings, 30, that had access to it. The court's investigators couldn't find who it was. So it'd be the same type of thing here. 300 people had access to this document. The feds will say we couldn't figure out who it is, unless it's a rogue like that young man, Jack Teixeira, the Air Force reservist on Cape Cod, Massachusetts, who revealed top secret documents about a year ago. You remember that case? He's serving 20 years. But if his bosses had done it, nobody would have been prosecuted.
Yeah, you and I talked about this in the context of the Julian Assange case.
Yes.
You know, people at the highest levels leak all the time, and they leak highly classified documents. And somebody down below leaks, even a confidential document, or not a top secret, but just a secret document, he or she could end up in the who's go.
Switching gears. Do you have an opinion on the presence or significance, if they're there, of North Korean troops in Russia?
Yeah, it's hard to tell what's going on here. I mean, the propaganda machine in Ukraine and in the West is portraying this as a major development. As best I can tell, there are a couple thousand Korean troops in the eastern part of Russia. They're not in Ukraine. They're not, getting ready to enter.
They're on the other side of Siberia.
Yeah. And furthermore, even if they come into the fight, I don't think it's going to matter very much. You're talking basically about a brigade's worth of men. And I mean, it certainly would help the Russians a bit, but not very much. And given where the balance of power is and where the war is headed, I don't think the Russians really need the Koreans.
How impactful is the BRICS meeting going on in Russia as we speak? And before you answer that, here's a rather happy President Putin at the outset of the meeting earlier this week. Number 14, Chris.
We never refused the dollar as a universal currency. We were blocked from using it. Now, 95% of all external trade of Russia, it is carried out with our partners in national currencies. They did all this with their own hands. They thought everything would collapse, but no, nothing collapsed. It's developing on a new basis.
Stated differently, not only did the sanctions not work, we're in better shape economically, old Uncle Joe, than before you imposed them. That's the opening of BRICS. Now Iran is joining. The GDP of BRICS is 60 trillion. What's your handle on all this, Professor Mearsheimer?
Well, not only did the sanctions not work against Putin, our attempt to isolate him internationally and turn him into a pariah has categorically failed. Is there a better example of this failure than the BRICS conference? I mean, there are just all sorts of countries there. including India, which is a democracy that the United States cares greatly about, that is breaking bread with the Russians. So I think what's going on is more evidence that that Putin is in the driver's seat. He beats sanctions. He's winning on the battlefield. He's not a pariah. And BRICS is an impressive institution that shows lots of evidence that it's going to grow more impressive with the passage of time. This is bad news for the United States and good news for Putin.
Is this a route toward, even though President Putin said it's not in that clip that we just showed, is this a route towards the removal of the dollar as the world's reserve currency? I suppose if they're going to do that, they're going to have to create a currency, whatever they call it.
Yeah, I'm not an economist, and so you want to take everything I say with a grain of salt, but I do read about this, and most people who are in the know argue that the dollar is not going away anytime soon, that over the long term, we may be able, or they may be able to, create some sort of new system to replace the SWIFT system and to replace the dollar, but that's not going to happen anytime soon.
Is BRICS, as you understand it, a way around NATO's politicized sanctions and efforts to isolate President Putin?
Well, what's going on here is during the unipolar moment, the United States took that Western order that it had created during the Cold War to wage the Cold War against the Soviet-led order. We took it and we spread it all around the globe. So during the unipolar moment, we had this international order, and there was no BRICS, right? It was the Western order. But with the passage of time and the coming of China and Russia to great power status and the growing dissatisfaction outside the West with the West's policies, not just the United States' policies, but European policies as well. That growing dissatisfaction with the Western order is leading to the creation of a new order.
Right.
And that new order includes institutions like BRICS. You want to remember that an order is a bundle of institutions. The Western order that you and I knew in the Cold War included institutions like the IMF, the World Bank, GATT, NATO, the European Union. Those institutions were part of that Western order. And again, that Western order became the international order during the unipolar moment. But that world has gone away. And now you see new institutions. BRICS is just one of them. There are others out there as well. Think Belt and Road. Think the AIIB. So there are lots of other institutions that are popping up. And what you see is that the Western order is under threat.
Tell me what you think of President Xi's opinion of the genocide in Gaza. Cut number 3, Chris.
The humanitarian situation in the Gaza Strip continues to deteriorate. The war in Lebanon has started again, and the conflicts between relevant parties are further escalating. We need to promote a ceasefire as soon as possible, stop the killing, and make unremitting efforts for a comprehensive, just, and lasting solution to the Palestinian issue.
Surprised that he chose to make comments like that in his opening remarks at BRICS?
Not at all. I mean, I agree with him 100%.
Well, I know you agree with him, but BRICS is theoretically about economics, not about politics. But tell me why you think he said that. Will China get involved in a full-fledged battle between Iran and Israel, with the United States backing Israel and Russia backing Iran?
I want to be very clear here. BRICS is not just an economic institution. It's also a political institution.
Is it military?
No, it's not military, but it is political. It's just very important to understand that. Politics, in my humble opinion, always trumps economics. And
right.
But in this case,
I know Jeff Sachs disagrees with that, but occasionally great minds can disagree. Go ahead.
I'm sure Jeff disagrees with that. But the point I would make to you is not to privilege politics over economic, but to say that BRICS is both a political and economic institution. Look, if you go outside the West, virtually everyone is appalled at what the Israelis are doing in Gaza, and the fact that the West, and this includes countries like the United States and Germany, are backing Israel, that they are complicit in this genocide. People are horrified for all the obvious reasons. And I believe that people like Xi are making these statements because they believe, from a moral point of view, that what's going on in Gaza is wrong. But also, it's in their political interest to make these arguments because they end up looking like they're reasonable. They end up looking like the good guys, and we end up looking like the bad guys. Now, is this going to lead to China actually getting involved in a meaningful way in the Middle East, or Russia getting involved in a meaningful way in the Middle East because of the genocide? I think the answer is no.
Is BRICS anti-Western or just non-Western?
Oh, I think it, in a very sort of subtle way, is anti-Western. I think it was created in large part to deal with the fact that the West had become, in important ways, a threat to those countries. I think, it's certainly the case with Russia, certainly the case with China, but even India. The Indians are very suspicious of the Americans, as they should be.
Well, let's say the war in Ukraine is over. Russia retains the real estate that it acquires. President Zelensky retires to his villa in Tuscany. A new government comes in, and they sign an amicable peace treaty with Russia. Whoever the new president of the United States is, President Harris or President Trump, removes the sanctions on Russia. Can Russia sell vodka to the United States or only to the other BRICS nations?
Well, if what you described actually happens, then I think Russia's relations with the West, and this, of course, would include the United States, would improve markedly. It would be a new world in terms of relations between Russia and the West. But the problem is that what you described is not going to happen. At some point in the future, hopefully the not too distant future, the war in Ukraine is going to come to an end, or at least the shooting is going to stop, and you're going to get a frozen conflict. But you're going to have poisonous relations between Russia on one side, Ukraine on the other, and the United States and the Europeans on the other as well. And these poisonous relations are going to extend for as far as the eye can see. And this
if BRICS is not a club of exclusivity, what is it?
Well, BRICS is an institution that includes a good number of countries,
right,
that have deeply hostile relations with the United States. This is Russia and China. And it includes countries that have mixed relations with the United States. This includes India and South Africa. And you want to note that Turkey has applied to become a member of BRICS. Turkey is a member of
NATO.
And
Iran is now a member of BRICS.
Iran, of course, and Iran would be right up there with China and Russia as countries.
But what does Iran gain if it's not a defensive pact? If it's not an economic pact of exclusivity, like there'll be no tariffs, whatever these exclusive agreements are, what do they gain?
Well, what they gain is they gain access to an institution that is basically a set of rules that facilitates their economic and political intercourse with other countries that are in that institution. And when that institution acts collectively, that will sometimes work to Iran's benefit. It's not like joining BRICS is, a way of solving all your main security problems. It doesn't do that much for you, but it helps here and there. And Iran has a deep-seated interest. and in moving as closely as possible to countries like Russia and China, and even countries like India. And BRICS provides a vehicle for that purpose.
Here's President Xi, again, this time talking about Ukraine in his opening comments. Chris, cut number 4.
The Ukraine crisis is still dragging on. China and Brazil, together with relevant countries in the global south, have launched the Friends for Peace group on the Ukraine crisis, aiming to gather more voices committed to peace. We must adhere to the 3 principles of not spilling over the battlefield, not escalating the war, and not provoking fires from all sides, and help ease the tension as soon as possible.
The Friends for Peace group. How meaningful is that? Or is it just a PR stunt by the president of China sounding very Western?
I don't think it's a PR stunt, but I don't think it's going to lead to very much. I think that, Xi and Modi both understand full well that Putin has a deep-seated interest in making sure that he prevails in Ukraine and that he prevents Ukraine from becoming part of NATO. And they're not going to stand in his way because they need Putin as much as Putin needs them. These countries are all coming together in BRICS because they have a vested interest in working together against the West, against the United States. So Xi and Modi don't want to do anything to undermine Putin, but at the same time, they want to make it clear that they are in favor of peace and that they'll do whatever they can to make peace happen and to prevent the war from escalating in different ways. So you can understand their position pretty easily.
Before we meet again, probably next Thursday, do you expect that Israel will have attacked Iran, or do you think they'll wait until after November 5th?
It's a really very interesting question. My guess is, I don't know, my guess is that maybe they'll wait. Maybe the Biden administration will convince them to wait. They've been talking about delaying the attack because of these 2 documents that were leaked. And as I said to you before, I don't understand why those 2 documents mean anything of any consequence for purposes of delaying the attack. I have the sense that they're delaying the attack because the Biden administration has asked them to delay the attack. But it is very hard to say, when they will attack.
Professor Mearsheimer, a pleasure, my
Special edition from the banks of the Great Volga River. The city of Kazan is at the center of world politics. The second day of the BRICS summit has begun. Putin has just given the official start. The president said that Russia approached the preparations for the summit with great responsibility. The main goal is to strengthen the international authority of the association. The agenda includes de-dollarization of the world economy and expansion of BRICS. According to Putin, more than 30 countries in the world want to join this bloc. The city of Kazan and our Olga Skabeva, who sees and hears everything, are in touch with us. Olga, hello. Zhenya, hello. Dear friends and comrades, in fact, the list of those who would officially like to join the bloc, not anti-Western, but already officially to the bloc of states, will be recorded today at the last meeting. The names of all states will be written down due to the fact that there are discrepancies. I remind you that BRICS currently consists of 9 states, and there are about 30 countries in the queue. Putin's assistant Ushakov announced this the day before. In this regard, we are waiting for developments. The second day of the summit has already begun. The president of our country has already held one-on-one talks with almost all BRICS participants. Let me remind you that, according to updated information, 40 delegations are present here. The day before, they talked about 36. No, there are still 40. and 24 world leaders. In this regard, of course, you can literally hear the gnashing of teeth from Washington. Washington is terribly worried that the US has not arrested all the planes, in particular, Nicolas Maduro's plane. Let me remind you that Venezuelan Air Force One is currently detained in the Dominican Republic at the request of Washington. But Nicolas still flew to Kazan with his wife on a rented plane. As he descended the steps, he sent greetings to all Russian people. Antonio Guterres also flew here. Probably. All this already looks like a joke in the sense that the Ukrainian Foreign Ministry has demanded an explanation from the United Nations for the third time in the past 24 hours as to why Guterres is flying to Kazan in Russia. He refused to go to the so-called peace summit in Switzerland, where he was personally invited by a certain Zelensky, but he is right now here in Russia. Moreover, the Ukrainian Foreign Ministry has already come to direct insults. They called Guterres a Komsomol member who, at Putin's request, galloped to bow to him. They also said that Guterres was brought up in an anti-Western paradigm and nothing will help him. It will be interesting to see how relations between Zelensky and the United Nations will develop further. This is terribly interesting, and what will Antonio Guterres himself say about this, who said the day before that attending international summits is actually his direct responsibility? There is also something interesting further. NATO suddenly began sending rays of love, gratitude, and support to Turkey. The fact is that Erdogan is a NATO member. He is one of the largest American allies. Let me remind you that Incirlik is one of the largest American NATO bases. And he is not just flying to Putin in the city of Kazan, in Russia. Turkey is officially submitting an application to join BRICS. In this regard, official Washington, which the day before, in the person of Karine Jean-Pierre, stated that America does not care about the BRICS summit. But now official Brussels and official London are changing the agenda. All Western propaganda today reports that Putin has gathered world leaders here in order to overshadow the influence of the United States. Of course, they did not like the nightly embraces of Putin, Modi, and Shimor. Bloomberg, in particular, reports that in the embrace of the president of Russia, there is another word, the isolated president of Russia. There are 3 billion people. The point is that exactly 3 billion citizens live in India and China. The previous night, the program ended at a time when it was already getting light in many countries. Let me remind you that the leaders had flown in from all over the world. In general, for many, the atmosphere, the time, and the temperature here are unusual. For example, the leader of Ethiopia did not take off his hat even during dinner. In the end, he did take off his hat. Indian Prime Minister Modi was also present at the dinner in a warm red scarf. But, of course, that is not the main thing. These are, as they say, nuances. These are details. The fundamental point is that despite the fact that the dinner in the town hall was, naturally, informal, Putin's assistant Ushakov came out to the journalists in the evening and said that the topic of Ukraine, despite the fact that it is not the main thing here, is naturally on the agenda. Well, the key from Ushakov, all BRICS leaders, including 3 billion people in India and China, despite insinuations that India allegedly does not share Putin's point of view, agreed on the text of the final declaration on Ukraine. And it will be published today at lunchtime. That is, at the so-called Zelensky Peace Summit, where they discussed Ukraine and tried to punish Putin. They could not agree. The second peace summit was canceled, and here, at the BRICS summit, there is definitely a final declaration. And the funniest thing in this regard, probably, is this message from Politico. They tried to isolate Putin, but the West ended up isolated. The British Daily Mail writes that sanctions are not working. The American Newsweek reports that Putin is gathering the world's economies here in Kazan in order to eclipse the influence of the United States. The Washington Post writes that BRICS is a bloc to counter U.S. hegemony. Foreign Affairs writes that the agenda is to destroy the American dollar. Right now, you are watching the official ceremony of photographing the leaders. Here in Kazan, they say that they are not working against other countries. They just want to be sovereign states. Washington has imposed more than 1,500 sanctions against Moscow. There are about 300 sanctions against China, including trade restrictions on imports, imposed under the pretext of protecting American national security. Iran faces more than 1,000 sanctions due to its nuclear program. More than 300 sanctions have been imposed against Venezuela. Now the BRICS countries are gaining independence from the U.S. A new digital payment platform will be able to protect transactions from the risks of influence from Washington. NATO Secretary General Ruda, commenting on Turkey's desire to join BRICS, said that Ankara remains a key partner of the alliance. About 5,000 American soldiers are stationed at the Incirlik Air Base, and American nuclear weapons are stored. About 50 American B-61 bombs. Late at night, despite Kiev's hysteria, the UN Secretary General arrives in Kazan. Having tried the Tatar chak-chak, Guterres smiled. The Ukrainian Foreign Ministry even published a message in which it complained that the UN Secretary General refused to fly to the so-called peace summit in Switzerland, but he accepted Putin's scandalous invitation. The UN press service stated that participation in meetings with a large number of important states, such as the summit in Kazan, is a standard and necessary practice. BRICS unites 3,700,000,000 people by this year. The combined GDP of the BRICS countries is already $68 trillion, which is almost 37% of the world's GDP. The Ukrainian Foreign Ministry stated the following. The UN Secretary General rejected Ukraine's invitation to the first Global Peace Summit in Switzerland, but he accepted Putin's invitation to Kazan. This meeting is of great importance for the work of the UN, since the BRICS countries represent about half of the world's population. South Korea, one of the world's strongest countries in military terms, could become Russia's new enemy, according to Bild. Apparently, this is how Germany, the second largest supplier of weapons to Kiev after the United States, is trying to raise the morale of Ukrainians. According to the newspaper, the most elite special forces unit that guarded the father of the current leader of the country, Kim Jong-il, will allegedly go to fight in Ukraine. The Germans even call these fighters combat robots, since they grew up in a complete information vacuum, without access to the internet, telephones, Western television, and other external information. They say that they were prepared for the holy war against the NATO devils and against the enemies of their beloved leader from childhood. This is a direct quote. What are these photos worth? Look. Here, North Korean servicemen are breaking concrete slabs with their bare hands. They are lifting very heavy logs on, which commanders are jumping. I must admit, it looks really impressive. The American magazine Newsweek even assures that if the information about the North Korean military contingent in Ukraine is confirmed, then Seoul may send its military to Kiev. Since servicemen from South Korea will be able to help the Ukrainian army with interrogations and with the translation of North Korean prisoners, and also serve as instructors and familiarize Ukrainian militants with combat tactics that are new to the whole world. Pyongyang has already denied sending military personnel to Russia 3 times. At a meeting on international security disarmament, North Korea's representative to the UN said the West's furious cries were nothing more than baseless. Stereotypical rumors aimed solely at tarnishing North Korea's image and undermining the legitimate friendly and partnership relations between the two sovereign nuclear states.
Hey, come see us on tour. We're going to be in Los Angeles, Columbus, Ohio, Dayton, Cleveland, Cincinnati, Lexington, Kentucky, Burbank, California, and Honolulu. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets. And I wanted to talk to everybody about what's happening right now. There's a BRICS, which is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South America are joining together to oppose the West, the United States, because we're using the dollar as a weapon, at which we've talked about on this show many times before, because the United States dollar is the reserve currency of the world. Now, everybody in the world is afraid we're going to sanction them, which is what we've been doing all over the world, including with Russia. And so they're having a big meeting right now in Moscow. Putin gathers allies to show West's pressure isn't working. And just so you know, the world is changing. So there they are. That's they're all getting together. And I just want to bring on someone who knows about this. Mark Sleboda is an independent Moscow-based international affairs and security analyst. He's also a former nuclear reactor operator for the United States Navy, as well as a contributing political analyst at the RT Network. He previously served as a senior lecturer and researcher of sociology at the Moscow State University. Welcome to the show, Mark Sleboda.
Jimmy, thanks for having me. It's an honor and a pleasure to be on the show.
So this is it's great to have you. I'm glad. Thanks for making time for us. I really appreciate it. I know it's early there. And this is because the United States, this is what they said was going to happen if Trump was president, that he was going to push our enemies closer together. He was going to make our friends turn away from us. That's exactly what's happening, because the United States is warmongering like crazy, and they're weaponizing the dollar. And the irony is that the United States is such a chauvinistic country that they thought they almost begged, they almost bullied Russia into doing this. And I'm going to show you this is a 40-second clip of Joe Biden. I think this was from like 2007. Let's watch this.
Our conversations have gone off, which was repeated with Lebanon. They talked about they don't want this NATO expansion. They know it's not in their security interest, and on, and said, well, and if you do that, we may have to look to China. And I couldn't help using the colloquial expression from my state by saying to Zhiganoff, lots of luck in your senior year. Good luck. And if that doesn't work, try Iran. I'm serious. I said that to them, and these were, and they know, I knew, they knew, everybody knows that is not an option. And everybody knows, every one of those leaders acknowledges and needs, and they resent it, but they need to look west. And the question is, whether this is designed to completely shut them out, but not in terms.
So there's Joe Biden, and now this just happened a few hours ago. Russia's President Putin has been gifted a mock-up of a BRICS bill at BRICS Summit in Kazan. So Mark, tell me what is happening with BRICS. Is it the beginning of the end for the U.S. dollar being the reserve currency? And will BRICS bring nations together that are normally not friendly to each other in opposition to the United States economic hegemony?
Okay, so first of all, it has already brought countries that have issues with each other, right? The original core members of BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. India and China have lots of issues, right? Some border issues on an uninhabitable plateau in the Himalayas that may have been settled just before this, but there's still geopolitical tensions there. But at last year's summit, BRICS was expanded, right, by 4 new members, including Iran, Ethiopia, the United Arab Emirates. Saudi Arabia is still kind of sitting on the fence there. But these are a wide spread of geopolitical countries around the world. And there are some nearly 40 countries that have, literally put forward an application to join BRICS, right? There's a storm at the door. And the reason is because of the West's tight control of the global financial and economic architecture, which in such institutions set up by Bretton Woods, like the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund, there has been, shall we say, unequal representation in leadership, meaning the West is no longer the dominant economies of the world to such a degree, but they're preventing other countries from having a role in the decision-making process. Plus the overuse of sanctions, tariffs, and other measures by the U.S. to try to contain global control, their hegemony economically, and particularly against Russia, this weaponization of the SWIFT financial telecommunications system and other measures has lots of countries very nervous, because what can be done to Russia could also be done to them.
So
when we're talking about a currency, Putin made clear that that's down the road. We're on baby steps yet. That is a potential far down the road, but that there's not that initiative being made quite yet.
So can you explain to people what the SWIFT banking system is and how the United States kicked Russia out of that, being able to use that? Can you explain what that is?
Sure. It's the acronym is the Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunications. All right, so banks talk to each other electronically through encrypted, secure computer systems and software. That's basically what it is. It's based out of Belgium. It's been set up since '73, but the U.S. and the EU have tight control of it. But it is anytime border trade is conducted, something like nearly 90% of international trade is conducted through the SWIFT systems, whereby banks in different countries that are part of the system talk to each other. So right at the start of the Russian intervention in the Ukrainian civil conflict in 2022, the U.S. reacted very quickly to order SWIFT to kick Russian banks out of the system, to severely limit Russia's ability to trade with other countries. Now, alternatives were found rather quickly, but that is probably the major thing that is being worked on in BRICS right now, is creating an alternative to the SWIFT system that operates with the BRICS central banks completely independent and trading in their own currencies and digital currencies rather than the dollar. And that will be an alternative to a major measure of economic control that the US and Europe now have on much of the rest of the world.
So how is Russia operating an economy if they don't have access to SWIFT?
Because they're making bilateral transactions, right? Individual banks are talking to individual banks rather than relying on the SWIFT system. And when they can't use the dollar, not only when they can't, but there is a specific initiative to stop using the dollar completely in trade. Right now, Russia and China, two of the world's major economies, right? Russia, the International Monetary Fund just revealed is now, by purchasing power parity, the fourth largest economy. It has knocked off both Germany and Japan now.
Really?
During the period of U.S. sanctions against them. It's now China, the U.S., China, the U.S., India, and now Russia. So the fourth largest economy. Russia has jumped 2 places in the last 2 years. So much for being able to crush the Russian economy in that measure. But so many countries want Russian commodities, oil, gas, metals, grain, everything. They find ways of working outside of the dollar and outside of the SWIFT system, because these are all finite commodities. Everyone needs them. And you can't just take them out of the global market, despite the U.S., the West's best attempts to do so.
So now there are 30 countries participating in this SWIFT summit and 20 heads of state. But there's still only 6 members of BRICS? Is that true?
9. There's 9 permanent members of BRICS now as of this year, right?
And who would those be? Could you tell me?
Yeah, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, Ethiopia, Iran,
Turkey?
the United Arab Emirates.
Oh, really?
And Saudi Arabia is sitting on the fence on that. They've been offered in invitation. They are participating, but the Saudi legislative body hasn't ratified it. But right now there's actually kind of disagreement already within BRICS about further expansion, with India and Brazil kind of wanting to slow things down in terms of expansion and which countries are allowed in. For instance, Brazil is now very much against Venezuela joining.
So it seems to me like that would be a way. So it seems like to me Lula is under the thumb of the Western economic hitmen.
More so than during his previous presidency. I think he's much more cautious about bucking the U.S. after spending time for, bull feces corruption charges in prison.
Yes. So they threw Lula in prison, and they thought that the center-right candidate would win that election in Brazil, and then the far-right guy won, which was Bolsonaro, who a lot of people say can compare is like the Trump. He's a disruptor. He's like the Trump of Brazil. And so the establishment didn't know what to do. So what they had to do was let Lula back out of prison because he's the only one who could beat Bolsonaro at the ballot box. So they did that. And then they immediately staged their own version of January 6th in Brazil. And they had a big a riot at the Capitol. They then outlawed Bolsonaro. They said that he engineered it, just like they said Trump did, even though it was the FBI that engineered it, Nancy Pelosi, in this show's opinion here in the United States. And now Bolsonaro's he's made illegal from running for president again. So, and then you hear Lula saying all this garbage about the elections in Venezuela, which parrots the State Department in the United States, which that's always a red flag. So they've got him. And, Joe. Go ahead.
Lula was supposed to be at the summit as well, but evidently he fell in the shower and hit his head and couldn't show up. He fell and couldn't get up again, I guess.
And so that's another way for the United States to control BRICS. They can control it from the inside because they now have control over Lula, and they're a big player. For instance, Argentina didn't join, and now they have Milei. How do you say his name?
Milei, I believe.
Milei, right? So now he's a puppet of Western economic hitmen, and if they were in already joined BRICS, he could then be a tool to stop the expansion and kind of upset things, right?
Absolutely. And take a look at two of the other new members, Egypt and the United Arab Emirates.
Yeah.
Egypt is one of the biggest recipients of U.S. military aid every year going back decades. And the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia, by the way, both host thousands of U.S. troops at bases in those countries.
Right.
So on one hand, right, it could be a potential Trojan horse. The U.S. can exert pressure on them. On the other hand, it also shows us that long-term U.S. allies are looking for options. Right. That's another thing that it shows us
because they're afraid that they could be next. Right. Like
everyone's afraid they could be next. Right.
I mean, meaning next for the United States to sanction.
Yes. And very few countries in the world, in fact, I don't believe any other country is as well positioned to withstand U.S. economic and political pressure like Russia.
Well,
it's being the largest country in the world.
I did not know they moved up 2 positions on the world economic. That is and this is after, we're supposed to be destroying them economically. We kicked them out of SWIFT. We're doing unbelievable sanctions. We blew up their Nord Stream pipeline, which was a major revenue source for them. But all it actually ended up doing was hurting Germany and Europe's economy. Correct?
Russia's economy grew faster than the U.S.'s last year.
That is,
and you're absolutely right. The deindustrialization of Germany, as a result of no longer having access to cheap reliable Russian gas to fuel their economy, it's dragging all of Europe into an economic doldrums.
So do you see any signs of Europe turning against the United States? I don't
Absolutely
either.
not.
Why
Absolutely
is this?
It's because the current EU foreign policy elite, I believe, has been mentally colonized by US neocons. We've heard Joseph Borrell, who is was the high foreign policy muckety muck of the EU. He resorted a couple years ago to a lot of rhetoric referring to the EU as a garden, right? And the rest of the world is a jungle that needed to be pruned, right? This type of, and it was clear he was really actually talking about Africa, which is incredibly racist. But this type of jungle and garden rhetoric, this is literally after Robert Kagan's book titles. Robert Kagan is the arch neocon of neocons in the United States. By the way, the husband of Victoria Nuland, previously of the US State Department under multiple administrations. And he's not the only one. We see a lot of these EU foreign policy and political elites quoting Robert Kagan, which is just mad. It's insane. And these US foreign policy, the European foreign policy elites right now, they literally are happy about their place as important vassals of the United States in US-led Western global hegemony. They want to be properly governed by the United States. They're willing vassals.
You would think that the business leaders in Europe would have some input in this, and then they would want to shake off the United States control. Why?
You would think so, and certainly within Germany, it was the business community to a very large degree that pushed to have the Nord Stream 2 pipelines constructed in the first place. But the result of just being shut out of this process now, of the political process, is that Germany's biggest economic companies, they're moving to the United States. So the US actually benefits. There's a huge emigration of high energy cost companies out of Germany to the US, because in relative terms, comparatively, energy costs in the US are much lower than they are in Germany. So for instance, some of Germany's biggest chemical and manufacturing companies have in the last 2 years moved to the United States. So it's really it's a kind of sadomasochism, I think, by Europe, where they're literally inflicting damage on themselves. Viktor Orban, the prime minister of Hungary, said with these U.S. sanctions, with these U.S. pressured sanctions that Europe has agreed to on Russia, that it's not that Europe has shot itself in the foot with the sanctions, but that Europe has shot itself in the lungs with these sanctions. To put it into context of how much damage it has done to the European economy.
So, and this is something that, well, here's Putin. I just want to show what Putin said today at the BRICS summit, and he's talking about the U.S. dollar and how this isn't voluntary. They're not going off the U.S. dollar voluntarily. They're being forced to do it by the United States and the hegemons economically. Here, let's listen. He says, "Thank you. You said that the dollar is used as a weapon." Yes, absolutely. We see it like that. I actually think this is a big mistake of those who does this, because the use of the dollar, and it is still the most important instrument of world finance, using it as a means of achieving political goals undermines confidence in this currency and reduces its capabilities. But it's not us who does that. Other people do that. We don't refuse it. We do not fight the dollar. But if we are not allowed to work with, But if we are not allowed to work with, what should we do? We are forced to look for other alternatives. That is going on now. So he had one more thing to say about it. Here, he's talking about de-dollarization, and let's listen to what he says. There's a, you could turn it up because there's a translator.
You say we need to be more active. How? I think making too much fuss is inappropriate. We're taking individual steps, one after another.
As regards the finance, we did not drop dollars in the dollars, the universal currency. It wasn't us. We were banned and barred from it, and now 95% of all the external trade of Russia is denominated in national currencies. They did it themselves with their own hands. They thought we would collapse. No, we haven't.
You say
so he's saying they thought, so we didn't do it, and now we have to conduct all our trade in national currencies, like you explained earlier. And so, well, let me just show this one tweet. So it's like someone leaving you out and thinking you're going to come back begging, but you got better without their influence. The Russians' economy got better. It grew faster than the United States economy. This is one of the best explanations for de-dollarization I've ever read so far from the Russian President Putin. The West took Russia off SWIFT. Russia's currency went up. And so here's all the BRICS countries now. So the green ones are the originals, and the light green are the people who want to join. And these are the newly added. So anyway, how long do you think, Mark, it will be before BRICS actually puts a dent in Americans' economy, and do you think this is really the beginning of the end for the United States hegemons?
Okay, so first of all, I want to say that Putin is actually being a little subtle there, because it's true that Russia and China for years have been slowly starting to think and to begin processes of moving away from the dollar, because they already could tell the sanctions and blackmail potential. But it's certainly clear that since 2022, well, there's an acceleration, right? There's an absolute necessity. So it has been done much more quickly. Well, if you take a look at the BRICS countries now, their share of the global economy is now significantly bigger than the G7, right? The G7 now are only 30% of the global economy all put together, while the BRICS are over 36%, right? So already there's a more global trade happening within the BRICS countries than within the established, G7, the top of the West, if you will. And it's not so matter of BRICS putting a dent in the U.S. and the Western economy. And you've got members like India and Brazil who are very clear that they, their vision of BRICS, at least, and it's a consensus-based organization, is not to be an anti-Western organization. It's simply, as Putin said, an organization that does not include the West. But because the US-led West is bent on hegemony, they view any type of organization that they don't have control over as a threat, right? So they're already seeing it as a threat. So as they attempt to tighten the screws on countries, right, because the sanctions against Russia aren't working, the US and Europe have resorted to secondary sanctions, where they now try to sanction the rest of the world, India, other countries, to force them to stop trading with Russia. That only encourages more and more countries to work outside the dollar, to trade in each other's currencies, to join BRICS. And of course, that's one of the big things BRICS has done, right, is to facilitate its members trading with each other outside the use of the dollar. And the U.S. economy, right, with its, $35 trillion of national debt,
yeah.
Right? Its entire Potemkin economy is constructed on the rest of the world using the dollar as a reserve currency. That's what allows the US to play this game called quantitative easing, that anytime they need more money, they just print it because they know it's in high demand. Well, the clock is ticking on that. And it may be a long time until the dollar collapses completely. But there is no doubt that in the last, since 2022, when the U.S. resorted to this nuclear economic option to try and failing to crush the Russian economy, that it has accelerated, right? There's no doubt whatsoever about it. And all of this excitement about BRICS, this long queue at the door at BRICS, is the clearest sign of that.
And so would you say, so it's a definite mistake and a miscalculation of the neocons that are running the country right now to try to sanction Russia, kick them off SWIFT. They thought Russia was a lot weaker than they were.
Yes.
And they thought that Russia would collapse and they'd be able to balkanize it, break it up, and sell it off to BlackRock and Vanguard and State Street, just like they're doing to Ukraine right now, correct?
Yes, they absolutely believe that. That was a clear Biden foreign policy. I can remember Jen Psaki talking about the ruble being rubble, and I'm thinking, you're rubbish. When I was hearing her say this, they believe, the Biden administration believed that they could, during Biden's 4 years, crush Russia quickly in Ukraine, provoke them into this, crush their economy with sanctions that would lead to regime change in Russia. They could then, as you said, balkanize, divide up the country, then pivot hard to China and confront China hard, right, militarily, right, in the South China Sea and the Taiwan Straits, and ignore the Middle East, right? They thought they could ignore the Middle East would stay quiet. And as, British political philosopher said, events, my dear boy, events. Well, they didn't crush Russia. The Middle East didn't stay quiet. And they can't even pivot their head to China at this point because everything else on their foreign policy agenda has collapsed.
So, okay. When you say it's a long way off before
it could be, right? We there's this idea that, it's the dollar's dominance will seem inevitable. I mean, will seem, very hard to erode. It will seem indomitable. And then, but the collapse may come very quickly. So some black swan event could trigger it to happen much more quickly. Similarly, in a further overreach, right, against another country of sanctions and cutting off of from the financial architecture of the world, that could also facilitate it even faster. But it's still true that the majority of global trade is happening with the dollar. It's just less than before. And once this BRICS alternative to SWIFT comes online, that will help it process even faster.
Okay. Mark Sleboda, I appreciate your insight into what's happening. Obviously, the United States sees BRICS as a threat, even though BRICS isn't an explicitly anti-Western organization, but we'll see what happens. It's in, Saudi Arabia started selling gold. Started selling oil in other denominations besides the U.S. dollar. So the petrodollar seems to be going away, which is a big deal for underpinning the U.S. dollar. Again, it's a big reason why I'm putting my retirement money in gold, and it really is. I see. I don't know how long. It's like things happen very slowly, and then they all happen all at once, right? And so that you're right. Some black swan event could happen, and you never know. I'm the people who are running the Western economy. I have no faith in them whatsoever. The neocons that are doing endless wars, we're bankrupting. We're in the end stage republic, is what it looks like to me, and we're bankrupting our empire the same way all empires ended, by overextending militarily on foreign wars while we defund our own people.
Take a look at the papers, the newspapers, the news broadcasts in the U.S. and in the U.K., elsewhere in the West, and see what insane gymnastics they're jumping to this week to refuse to say the word BRICS. Right? They can't acknowledge it, that it's an organization that is forming alternatives to U.S. Western control of global finance and potentially an alternative global order at the end of the day from the rules-based order. We make the rules, we give the orders. They just refuse to say the name. Right? It's like almost like a secret editorial crib note shared among all the papers in the world. And you opened it up with the BBC saying Putin gathers allies to show the West pressure isn't working. Well, it does show that, but that's not why they're gathered together. There's real, potentially world-shaking processes underway. And the West is playing see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil, because they refuse to acknowledge that it's happening.
And that's what that headline says right there. They won't mention BRICS. I didn't realize that. Thanks for pointing that out. Okay.
Well, Russian President Putin warns that the Middle East is on the brink of disaster and World War III seems imminent. Speaking to reporters this morning at the BRICS summit in Russia, Putin talked about how Israel's war against Gaza and Lebanon and Iran must stop before it spirals out of control.
Hostilities that started a year ago in Gaza Strip now spilled over to Lebanon. Other countries of the region were also affected. The confrontation between Israel and Iran is also growing. It looks like a chain reaction, and it puts the entire Middle East on the brink of a disaster, and the humanitarian situation is also exacerbated. The displaced persons and refugees is more than 1 million people. The infrastructure and residential areas, hospitals, schools, social infrastructure were largely damaged.
He also said that an independent Palestinian state must be established and must peacefully coexist with Israel. Now, Putin was also asked about the relationships with a future Trump administration and developing good relationships. He said Russia is open to this, but the U.S. has to make the first move, both by voting him in and then Trump actually making the contact.
As to how Russia-U.S. ties are going to develop going forward after the elections, this is an open question. We are open to, if the United States is open to building good relations with Russia, we will reciprocate. But the choice is up to the new American administration.
All right. Well, Trump's name came up again, responding to Democrats' fake news about Russia and Trump somehow colluding, even though that was disproven in previous elections. They have tried to warm that tea back up. Here's how President Putin called this nonsense.
As for your allegations about Donald Trump, this is something that we've heard for years. That we've been blamed, and Trump himself has been blamed about some kind of connections, having some kind of connections with Russia. Then they've had investigations, including investigations in the United States, including in the Congress, and everyone now agrees that this is complete nonsense. There has never been any kind of ties or connections between myself and Mr. Trump.
Yeah. Yeah, no connections whatsoever. See if you're going to see that. But by the way, that coverage of BRICS on any of the mainstream media,
right.
You're not going to see it. I mean, but I think it was pretty telling to hear President Putin say the Middle East is on the brink of disaster. I mean, because they will support Iran. They're not going to allow Iran to be wiped off the face of the earth.
Clearly not.
Right. And China, I mean, also involved in this in a big way. And you have all of these Arab countries right now pouring money into Egyptian banks and other places like that. So This is imminent right now.
Well, you know, a lot of politicians or analysts say that the Middle East considers themselves Western Asia. It's not a separate region. So this would be a war with a coalition of Asian countries with only Israel by themselves and the United States somehow reaching from across the pond to support. That's not possible. It's not possible to win a war like that. So don't let them sell you this war. One, because it's immoral, and two, because it would lead to millions of nonsensical deaths.
Exactly.
Appears to be the coming war between Israel and Iran, and whether there is a growing resistance, and the significance of the document leak, which purports to have been an American surveillance of the Israeli attack plans. But before we do, if I may, some questions about Ukraine. Do you have an understanding of whether or not North Korean troops are in Russia and prepared to fight with Russian troops against the Ukrainian military?
Yes. There are a couple of things that people need to understand. First of all, the photo that was used with a flag on top of a hill,
right,
showing North Korean troops in the foreground, listening to ostensibly a Russian officer, that occurred in eastern Siberia. In other words, you could call it Russian Manchuria. First of all, North Korea shares a border with Russia. All you have to do is get on the train, you ride up there, and that's what North Korean troops do on a pretty routine basis. They go up for training. And whenever foreign troops come into Russia to be trained by Russians, or foreign officers attend Russian military academies, they are all given Russian uniforms. So this is a standard routine operation. I don't know what the Russians specifically said to the North Koreans, but this is not unusual. However, this has nothing to do with Ukraine. And there is no need or intention under any circumstances to send North Korean troops to fight in Ukraine. This is another effort to try and create the illusion that somehow or another Russia has been weakened. We've been down this road before. The Russians are turning away people who are volunteering to fight in Ukraine. They have no manpower shortage, and they're healthy. It's the Ukrainians that have a manpower shortage and are losing airspeed and altitude every second.
When Secretary of Defense Austin made a somewhat ambiguous statement that there were North Korean troops in Russia, was he misinformed, or was he misinforming us?
Listen to his comment. He said, if it is true, that's how he begins the statement. If that's true, then this is evidence for Russia's weakened state and so forth. He knows it's not true. That's why he said, if it's true.
So he did misinform us. He should have said, I know it's not true. However, if it were, here's how I would analyze it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he's being paid to toe the line and
right.
You know, proselytize for the narrative.
I mean, this caused Mike Turner, who I think is a nut job, who's the Republican chair of the House Intel Committee. You may know him. You may have testified before them when you were in the Defense Department. I don't know. To say it's time for American troops on the ground in Ukraine to attack North Korean troops. This is absurd, is it not?
Oh, of course it is. But Abraham Lincoln said that there was no bar to stupidity, ignorance, or incompetence in politics. He was right.
All right. Do you think that the State Department silently, and the Defense Department, maybe not as silently, recognize that Ukraine is on its last leg?
Oh, absolutely. There's no question about that. Behind the scenes, NATO is crumbling rapidly. People are all looking for off ramps, but they're all stuck in the same position. How do you stand up and say, "Oh gosh, I'm sorry, I was wrong"? You know, what could Lyndon Johnson say in 1968? I didn't understand what I was doing. I'm in over my head. It's the same routine. They just haven't found a way to quietly withdraw. And ultimately, I think what will happen is that everyone will turn against Washington. Washington will have been the enemy that dragged them into a war they never wanted to fight, because there's no support for the war against Russia in Ukraine anywhere in Europe. Nobody's suiting up and ready to go anywhere. It's nonsense.
Yet this week, Colonel, Secretary Austin in Kyiv, face to face with former president, still claiming to hold office, Zelensky, said, "Here's another 400 million for you." Isn't that right down the rat hole?
Well, of course it is, but 400 million is chump change. We've wasted billions and billions and billions of dollars. We have no idea how much we've wasted. We know that a large portion of the equipment, some people say as much as a third, some say 25%, that we have provided to the Ukrainians is being resold on the black market to other buyers. And this money will certainly subsidize the government and the leadership of the military. Everybody asks, well, why haven't the Ukrainian generals stepped forward and been heard? Well, they're being well paid. Why does the parliament stand up and give Zelensky a standing ovation? They're all well paid. This is one giant grift.
Why is it that the Attorney General of Ukraine resigned 2 days ago in a draft dodging scandal, and it didn't even make the front pages? Is corruption that endemic and accepted there?
Well, first of all, accepted by the Ukrainian people? No, the Ukrainian people are miserable, but it's institutionalized. You know, you've seen all of the film clips of men being grabbed and dragged off the street, shoved into vans, and sent off to the front. I mean, this is a Stalinist regime. The secret police is effectively like the NKVD, shooting anybody that refuses to fight. You know, Stalin shot 1 million Soviet soldiers who refused to fight against the Germans. So this is a standard practice, and I would expect this man Zelensky, who is essentially a Bolshevik, and to do exactly what he's doing. And he's not going to stop until it becomes clear to him it's time to get out of town or die.
Transitioning over to Israel, Colonel, since we were together last, the Israelis succeeded in killing maybe their principal target in the past year, Yahya Sinwar. Some have said this is a great victory for Prime Minister Netanyahu. Some have said, well, it's just a PR victory. Some have said they have made Sinwar an iconic and everlasting hero to the Palestinian people. What's your take?
My take is as follows. In the history of the Punic Wars, Hannibal is telling his leadership in Carthage, thank you for the accolades. Thank you for the celebrations. We have inflicted numerous defeats on the Romans, but the Romans have never asked for a ceasefire. The Romans are not suing for peace, and thus our victories to this point are meaningless. His point was well taken. You know, unless you march right into Rome and ultimately crush the Romans, disperse the population, you're not going to defeat Rome. Well, the same is true for the Israelis. All they're doing is destroying infrastructure in Lebanon as well as in Gaza, and probably eventually anywhere else that they decide to fight. And we'll talk about that because there is a plan. And that's to drive whoever lives there out of the country. That's the point. That's why you destroy infrastructure, hospitals, buildings of all kinds and types. You're driving out the population. This is part of the greater Israel project.
Has Israel defeated Hamas?
No.
Here's somebody who disagrees with you. Our colleague, Ambassador Charles Freeman refers to this person as the worst Secretary of State since World War II, cut number 16.
Israel has achieved most of its strategic objectives when it comes to Gaza, all with the idea of making sure that October 7th could never happen again. In the space of a year, it's managed to dismantle Hamas's military capacity. It's destroyed much of its arsenal. It's eliminated its senior leadership, including, most recently, Yahya Sinwar. This has come at the cost, great cost, to Palestinian civilians in Gaza. Now is the time to turn those successes into an enduring strategic success. And there are really two things left to do. Get the hostages home and bring the war to an end with an understanding of what will follow.
Is he credible? Netanyahu will never bring the hostages home. Then there's no reason for war.
Well, let's understand something. Everyone in the world today, not just in the Middle East, but virtually everyone, views Blinken as Netanyahu's point man. And that's what he is. Our government is being hijacked. There's no one up there directing much of anything. They are, along with the government in London, by the way, they are all 100% on board with the Greater Israel Project. And he's certainly not going to say anything other than what he has. So everybody knows that he repeats Netanyahu's talking points. There's no daylight between them. One wonders just what happens in the White House behind the scenes, let alone the State Department. I think the one place that there are some voices that don't fall in line is DOD, because the CIA is joined at the hip with MI6 and Mossad. So virtually no daylight between those entities and us. And of course, the American people know nothing about it, have never been consulted, and the media ensures that the truth about what's actually happening on the ground never gets through.
Colonel, the White House announced in the past week 2 different announcements basically saying the same thing. 2 deliveries of THAADs, THAADS, the acronym, anti-missile defense systems, each accompanied by 100 U.S. troops. Did I miss something, or did Congress authorize troops on the ground in Israel?
No, I have people telling me all the time, Carl, this is unconstitutional. And other people say, what happened to the War Powers Act? We've got to come to terms with the reality that this government, this regime, has no use for the law. How often have we spoken about freedom of speech and the the various amendments of the Bill of Rights? No, they don't care. They're not interested. This has nothing to do with what is good or bad for the United States. Obviously, it's all bad for us. It's about a small group of people who've hijacked power, and they're exercising it. And the American people are paying very little attention.
This is the way Vietnam began, Colonel. They didn't have THAADs at the time, but they sent, small groups of troops over there under the guise of being advisors, technicians. What happens when they're shot at? What happens when they're killed by incoming Iranian missile fire? The Mike Turners of the world will say it's time for troops on the ground to attack Iran. They attack
exactly. From Netanyahu's standpoint, that's music to his ears. Please, by all means, remember in 1914, or actually it was before 1914, it was about 1912, after the Entente was stupidly formed between Great Britain and France, 2 countries that had been at each other's throats for hundreds of years. And I think it was the prime minister at the time, Asquith, he asked the president of France, how many soldiers do you want us to send, and how soon do they need to be there in the event of a German war with France? He said, just send us 1. We'll send him as far forward as possible and ensure that he is immediately killed. Well, his point was, we're not worried about that. We want you in the war. Britain had almost no army to speak of, but its massive industrial power made a huge difference, as did its navy. You have a similar situation now. Get these people on the ground in Israel. You have this radar, which is $500 million a piece. You've got 2 of them now, I suspect. I don't know if they've got a second one coming. I suspect they will. That's a target. As soon as it radiates, it radiates on a scale that we can't even describe. You put a human being in front of it for a few minutes, the human being will be fried. So this thing is going to emit, it's going to be a huge target, and the Iranians are going to have great difficulty avoiding its destruction. They're going to have to take it and destroy it. This is unavoidable. That's what Netanyahu wants. The real question is when the news comes out that we are now officially at war with Iran, if it ever does come out, what will the American people do? I don't know.
Well, getting back to your analogy in 1912, Colonel, are not these 200 American troops effectively tripwire?
Of course. But there are only 257,000 who are already in the region. Many of these distributed in small pockets in forward operating bases in Syria and Iraq, Jordan. Will these be targets? Most certainly. I'm sure they probably will be, although I'm sure the priority targets may be other things, our aircraft carriers, air bases, obviously anything that can be targeted that launches missiles or aircraft. So yeah, this is obvious, and people should be very concerned about it because you're now talking about a war that will spread very rapidly, and I hope we'll get to that in a second.
The documents that were revealed on the website Telegram, which have all the earmarks of being legitimate American top secret documents, revealed a couple of things: that American intel spies on the Israelis, probably no news to the people in the business; that American intel does not share everything with the other 4 eyes of the 5 eyes, probably nothing news to those in the business; that American intel casually refers to the Israeli nuclear weapons program, something not supposed to be acknowledged in an American document or by an official of the United States. What is your view of the significance of the release of these documents, whether it involves these aspects that I've mentioned or something that I have failed to mention?
Well, first of all, these documents don't tell Iran anything that the Iranians haven't already figured out. And I'm sure they've been through many, many scenarios. Iran is a sophisticated state. They can think through these things as carefully and effectively as anybody. So I don't think it was ever meant for Iran. I think whoever leaked this was probably leaking it to inform the American people of what's actually going to happen. There are still lots of people, I run into them all the time, and say, oh, well, Netanyahu will never strike Iran. This is never going to happen. And we have to understand that he very definitely is going to strike Iran. He has no choice. He's taken unsustainable losses against Hezbollah in the north. He's still taking losses inside Israel from Gaza. This is not getting any better. The only thing he's got left, the only play that is available to him at this point, is to start a major war with Iran and then await the Iranian response, knowing that will bring in the United States. We're obligated. We already said we are going to defend Israel. Well, defending Israel really involves offensive operations by U.S. forces against Iran, which is what he wants. So these things are going to happen. It's inevitable. I shouldn't say inevitable, but largely unavoidable. Let's put it that way.
Well, what do you think will happen next that will produce a wider war?
I think that several things are going on. First of all, let's look at it regionally. People aren't paying attention to what's happening in Syria. I think we're involved, along with Mossad, in stirring up the Kurds against the Turks. This is designed to warn Erdogan that if he and his government are considering supporting anyone against Israel, that they'll have a major war on their southern border or southeastern border. Frankly, the Turks can cope with that, and I think they'd probably welcome the opportunity to go in and annihilate the PPK and anybody that stands in their way in northern Iraq. For a very long time, the Turks have been arguing that northern Iraq is really Turkish territory and that the Kurds and Turkmens that live there should be inside Anatolia. That's an easy thing to happen, but it's not going to stop the Turks if there's a decision to enter the war otherwise from going in. But this puts Syria into play. The Israelis have been pushing us for a long time against Assad. And we've discussed this before as well. Assad was the lesser of all the evils and a force of stability there. But the Israelis have always wanted him gone. The Russians have stood by Assad, and they're not going to give up their bases on the Mediterranean. So all of these forces are coming into play right now in very ominous ways. Now, how does this become a regional war? And by the way, before we move on, a lot of money is starting to show up from Saudi Arabia in the bank accounts of Egypt. In other words, the National Bank. I think that's going to happen in Jordan. And I think the Saudis and the Emirates are sending money saying, you don't have to be dependent upon the United States and the West.
Is the resistance growing?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Everybody is on board. It's just that not everybody has the military power to respond. So they're responding in whatever ways they can. And that's why I was talking about the Peninsular Arabs who can finance Egypt and Jordan. And this is the biggest problem that King Abdullah faces. And for that matter, General Sisi. How do I move forward and have some solidarity with the rest of the Islamic world if I go under financially in the meantime? So they're saying, no, that's not going to happen. BRICS is very important right now. Xi said that it is absolutely essential that we move past the dollar, that we stop using it. Everybody who's at that conference understands that's where things are headed. This is the new parallel system. Now, back to what is the ultimate firecracker that blows this thing up, and that is Israel's strike against Iran. Now, we've had all sorts of articles come out in the Washington Post, New York Times, Wall Street Journal saying, oh, well, the Israelis have agreed to do this or not agreed to do that. If we understand anything, we should understand this. Mr. Netanyahu continues to exert far more influence and power in Washington than anybody in the government today. He is going to do whatever the hell he wants to do. Let's be frank. He's going to do it. And you've got President Trump has said he'll underwrite it. Kamala is tried to burnish her pro-Israeli credentials, but I think the Israelis are very suspicious of her, and I think they want very much for Donald Trump to win, and their agents in the United States are pouring hundreds of millions of dollars into the Trump campaign to make that happen. But if you're sitting where Netanyahu is right now, you really have an incentive to launch your strike before the election. You want to get this war underway, so regardless of whomever wins, they're stuck with fighting it. So that's where you get the regional war. And once we go after Iran, that brings in Russia. Russia has already got thousands of people on the ground in Iran. They're working feverishly to build everything that is required for Iran's defenses, but also to help the Iranians with regard to missiles and warheads and so forth. This is the beginning. Once he strikes Iran, that's your regional war, boundless, unlimited, no stopping it.
Does Russia engage in the war in an offensive way, or do they limit themselves to supplying the Iranians with defensive anti-missile facilities?
Well, they'll do what you described, the latter first, and they're doing that now. But as it becomes clear that we are committing, hundreds of fighter jets armed with various types of munitions designed to be launched at a distance so that the fighters are not shot down by air defenses. And we have all these vessels out there, including submarines. And this cannot be tolerated by our friend Putin for very long. He's going to intervene. Now, how he does that and under what circumstances, I can't predict. But it would be very hard to avoid. And Xi and Putin have both said to Iran, we will stand with you. And by the way, that probably includes another 80 countries in the world. Right now, Israel is really dependent entirely on us and on these promises of equipment and support from Great Britain. Britain is no longer a major power, but it helps to have the British on board as well. But that's about it. So this is a very serious moment. And I see no evidence anybody anywhere is interested in stopping this from happening. On the contrary, I think London and Washington have signed on very strongly for the Greater Israel Plan. They want to see Lebanon cleared. They want to see Syria largely cleared of what its population and its enemy Assad. And I think they're interested in seeing eventually something similar happen to Jordan as well as the West Bank. It's lunacy. I don't think it makes any sense. I think it will fail, but that's where we are.
And what do London and Washington want to do with 2 million, however many survive the Israeli genocide, Palestinians? Where will they go? Where will they live?
I don't think it's of much consequence to them. Let's be frank. If you destroy the infrastructure, the message is clear: leave. And millions of people are already milling around aimlessly in Lebanon and marching north towards Turkey. And that's what will bring the Turks into the fight. And that's why Turkey's presence at BRICS right now is so important. And Turkey will eventually join BRICS. This little spat with India, I think Xi and Putin will broker a deal, and Turkey will join BRICS. And once Turkey is in BRICS, that completes the process of solidarity across the region against Israel.
Turkey would have to leave NATO, would it not?
Well, a lot of people have thought that for a long time, but you know, Mr. Erdogan is nothing if not clever, and he'll keep his foot in our camp as long as possible. He would prefer to be thrown out rather than leave. And there may not be an effort to formally expel him, because I don't know that the rest of the Europeans would sign on for that. I think right now NATO is moribund. I don't think it means anything. I think it's an empty vessel.
President Xi at the BRICS summit yesterday decided to address the humanitarian disaster in the Gaza Strip. Cut number 3.
The humanitarian situation in the Gaza Strip continues to deteriorate. The war in Lebanon has started again, and the conflicts between relevant parties are further escalating. We need to promote a ceasefire as soon as possible, stop the killing, and make unremitting efforts for a comprehensive, just, and lasting solution to the Palestinian issue.
Does he send troops or military hardware there? Does he exert economic leadership, or does he just make moral statements like this one?
No, I think all of the above minus Chinese troops. Remember, there are now Russian warships in Iranian ports, and you have the Chinese contingent or flotilla in the Indian Ocean is larger than it's been in the past. I think you're going to see the Chinese bankroll and support Iran. So again, you know, how do you put it? I mean, for those out there that continue to invoke the World War I analogy, think of Iran as a very large version of Serbia. And once it's attacked, everything falls into place and we start going to war. And one wonders how long that could possibly last, because we don't have the conventional military power, the stocks of munitions, missiles, rockets, and so forth to keep going. Our Navy is not in good shape. They're cannibalizing equipment and ships to keep things at sea. You have a tremendous morale problem. People have been at sea too long, and we've lost a lot of quality people out of the armed forces in general. I mean, if you had to pick a time, a worse time, if you will, to start a war, I don't think you could do better than this for us. It's the exact opposite of what was the case in 1990. In 1990, our armed forces were in pristine condition. We were at the peak of our capability and power. And it was a consequence of that Saddam and his friends were all beaten rapidly into submission. This is the opposite now. We're the ones that are really not quite a facade, but we're certainly nowhere near where we were in the past. And starting a major war, which is something that nobody apparently in Washington believes could happen, is the last possible thing that we need.
And when Americans come home in body bags under President Biden or President Trump or President Harris in an undeclared war, how does that look politically?
Well, I agree with you, but let's stop and consider something else. I mean, if you're into watching the financial system right now, there's a great deal of information on the net suggesting that Bank of America is close to going under. Bank of America is a huge financial institution, and I don't know that the Fed and others can save it. It has too many unrealized losses on the books. The bond market is frightening, and interest rates are actually rising. We are on the precipice of a financial crisis that could drag us into the pit of despair, could seriously harm the United States and the people that live in it and destroy our living standards. Couple this with the war. What does the war do? Well, the war accelerates the disaster. It brings on the financial collapse much more quickly. That's one of the reasons that I'm puzzled by our readiness and willingness to let the Israelis do whatever they want. And in fact, we're not even exercising any restraint. So I guess letting is the wrong word, but underwriting it.
Right. Here's someone else who's perplexed at the West. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei yesterday, cut number 1.
Western politicians have been disgraced. Western policy has been exposed. They have failed. This is a major defeat. No one should speak of the Western civilization anymore. This is Western civilization. It doesn't care about taking money from its own people in all sorts of ways and sending it to kill small children, innocent offspring, destroy families, and martyr 10,000 children, leaving thousands orphaned. It doesn't matter to them. This is Western culture.
Does that encapsulate the view of the Arab street, the 2 billion over there?
I think it probably reflects views widely held all over the globe. The rest of the world views this in very negative terms. It is the European and American media, Australian media, the Anglosphere that continues to propagate this notion that something good, legitimate, and just is happening in the Middle East. And remember, inside Israel, the population there is being told that they're winning. Anybody who watches Israeli television listens to people talk about what they're going to do in the future with the territories that they quote unquote are conquering. It's a sort of a fantasy land, both here and in Israel. So when this war begins, it's going to be a very frightening specter for everyone.
You're not talking about a war where the Israelis attack and destroy the grid or the electrical ability or set off pagers in supermarkets. You're talking about a major destruction of Iranian infrastructure or an attempt to do so.
Well, they will prioritize their attacks against military targets, but I'm sure that many of those targets are in close proximity to civilian infrastructure, and the Israelis don't care about that, as we've seen thus far. So I'm sure some of that will happen. The bottom line is that Netanyahu is not going to waste his opportunity. He's a very smart man, and he's got a lot of capability working for him. So he's going to do as much damage as he possibly can to Iran's strike capability, to its intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, and communications. It's not going to work, but he's going to try, and then he's going to prepare for the counterstrike. And that's going to be the wish-fulfilling moment for him, because that's when we will inevitably engage. That's where we're headed, and we know that. And that's the danger, because it's all going to race out of control. And right now, Washington appears to be on autopilot. Nobody seems to be raising any serious questions about anything. Have you heard any discussion by the candidates of this? Is there any sense of great danger looming on the horizon? No. So God bless America.
Do we have the ability to give Netanyahu what he needs, offensive weaponry to degrade Iran's offensive attack ability?
Well, we're doing all that we can, but my point is it's not going to be enough. And this is the danger of escalating to the nuclear level. The Israelis are the ones who are most likely to use a nuclear weapon first. When they do that, the proverbial genie is out of the bottle. All hell will break loose. And if the Iranians have not already built nuclear warheads for use against the Israelis, it'll happen pretty quickly if they don't simply show up on the runways. I just have a terrible feeling that if things don't go the way Mr. Netanyahu wants them to, which is almost unavoidable, that they will turn to nuclear weapons.
Here's Sir John Sowers, who's the recently retired chief of MI6, giving us a slightly different view of this. I'd be anxious to hear your thoughts. Cut number 13,
The
Chris.
defense minister perhaps got ahead of himself when he implied there would be some form of intelligence operation, some form of cyber operation against Iran. The Americans have clearly been trying to restrain Israel. The Israelis might see an opportunity to strike Iran's nuclear facilities. Obviously, one of our biggest concerns has been Iran's slow but gradual process towards acquiring nuclear weapons. But in order to strike these nuclear facilities, which are deep underground, under meters of concrete, they need the weaponry that only the United States can supply. So I think what we will see is some form of cyber attack against the nuclear facilities, possibly coupled with missile strikes against military facilities, but leaving a major strike, a major kinetic strike against either nuclear or oil facilities on one side, not pursuing that route.
What do you think?
Well, this is the discussion that we've seen in the media. Remember, a couple of weeks ago, maybe it's not even a couple, probably a week ago, there were statements in the Washington Post and elsewhere that Mr. Netanyahu had agreed not to strike the oil facilities in Iran, the production facilities, and then there was a discussion about they won't touch the nuclear facilities. Then Mr. Netanyahu spoke publicly and said, let me be very clear, we will do whatever we want. We will do what we think is in our interest, and we don't care what anybody else thinks, and we're not agreeing to anything. I think he's delusional. If he thinks that the Israelis are going to deliberately avoid those targets, I certainly hope so, but I wouldn't bank on it.
Colonel McGregor, thank you very much, my dear friend. Thank you for your time. Not easy.
Corford, follow me.